evening, wherever you happen to be. Ken, did you see my reply to your much appreciated
Yes, I did.
DM?
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And let's get Jason up here. Who else wants to get up here? Jason's always welcome up here. Karam's always welcome up here.
Ben's up here. Ben, let's go.
Which Ben? Who's? Oh
And
yeah, Ben. Where?
Ben,
John
Of course, Ben's up
Francois.
here. Ben,
Blue
you
Ben.
have a room in a few hours, right?
Yeah, I'm doing a crypto or Bitcoin specifically beginner Q&A
Cool.
in 2.5 hours.
Very good. And let's see. Let's start there. Actually, We're going to go backwards today with a total backward version of tech news, where we're going to first look at. We're going to click on the title of the room, and that's going to show us the club profile page, as I think they call it at Clubhouse. And indeed, it shows tech news around the world starting now. And then in 2.5 hours from now, there's tech news around the world, med tech news, and Bitcoin beginner Q&A. So you've got two choices of deep dive rooms to get into, and that gives us only 2.5 hours to get through these headlines. That's going to be a challenge. Let's not waste another minute and get right into it. But Ame, you said you were burning with a headline.
Yeah, Tyler,
yes.
I'm just burning with a headline, and I know Ken and everyone's going to love this one, but I'm going to say a couple of sentences, and then I'm going to mute myself because it's going to be a good one, and I wish Charles was in here. Malta President's Charitable Fund suing Binance over $8 million in unpaid donations. A pledge made in 2018 while the crypto exchange Binance sought licenses on Blockchain Island remains unpaid. Binance Blockchain Foundation is accused of not paying donations promised to the Malta Community Chest Fund. The funds were pledged in 2018 and are now worth over $8 million.
Oh, whoa.
And now they're suing Binance over the non-payment of $8 million in donations. According to the court filing seen by Decrypt, the funds are pledged by the cryptocurrency exchange while it was pursuing licenses on the Mediterranean island. Dun, dun, dun. I think
Did you say Malta?
Yeah, Malta.
Yes.
Remember David was saying the black eat the black, hay to hay? The black eat the black in Malta? The Chinese saying, the black guys eat the black guys.
But what does that have to do with this?
I guess this is supposed to be part of, inverted commas, the bribe, and he didn't pay the bribe.
Oh, I see what you mean. Because Malta, you're implying Malta's kind of shady.
Inverted commas, I say.
Yeah. Yeah. You might have something there. I mean, we've been known to engage in a few conspiracy theories. And we have not only one, but two separate audio files for our different shades of conspiracy theories.
I think it was a very interesting news article that came out.
It is.
Simply because of everything going on. And now the fact of the matter is they owe money to a foundation that obviously CZ Binance paid to them in 2018 that was there to sort of allow them to do business. But as we've already known, Binance is being thrown out of a lot of places, inclusive of Malta, because the thing that I see is that Malta doesn't want to lose its gray status, as Alexandra once said. They don't want to lose their gray status for gambling and stuff like that. They want to stay with that. So they're just going to be like, Binance, get out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I think they would rather deal with the way they've been going with gaming and gambling and stuff than have to deal with the drama of crypto. But the reality is that now they're suing Binance because that money was supposed to be given back in 2018, not now 3 years later, but it was never provided. It was never given as it was promised.
Interesting. So now Cheryl's comment is a little less conspiratorial as well. And we mentioned here a few days ago, but that, geez, it's interesting. Binance was getting in hot water with a different country every week, and it's been, more than a week. So they were overdue for some hot water from somebody. And so now we can add Malta to the ever-growing list of regions or territories or countries that have a beef with Binance. We should call it our own new series called Beef with Binance, the Binance Beef update with Ame. So you can keep us updated. Who's next on the beef with Binance, the Binance beef? Who will be next?
I don't care. I'd still buy that shit.
Where's Michael? Where's Michael when we need him?
Who will be next on the beef with Binance?
That sounds like Jeopardy.
Yes, it is Jeopardy. Yes, it's our own little version of Jeopardy. We have to figure out which country is going to come out next against Binance. Okay, so thank you for that. So that is indeed a burning headline, and another burning headline that no doubt is buried in the top news and is certainly buried in the tweet somewhere that we will get to after the top news is that yesterday, well, about 4 days ago, we found a job listing for Amazon hiring like a crypto expert or a blockchain/crypto expert, and then that caused a whole bunch of speculation, including from here, that maybe that means that Amazon will be taking on Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin community just up and ran with that conspiracy theory and made it a fact, and as you know, a rather affectionate pump and dump. And indeed, it did pump up from 30,000 to 40,000, and now we might expect a dump. So if you have a platform that allows you to short Bitcoin, you might want to think about that. It's because the previous support point that it was testing at 30,000 might now be broken, which would drive it down to around 18,000, I would imagine, because it was quite a significant gap between its previous resistance or support point and then the next support point around 18. So we will see. But we'll get further into that, and we'll read the actual quote if somebody might have that handy. So the biggest news, though, at this very moment, on Tuesday, July 27th, the top headline is that Intel says its foundry services will build chips for Qualcomm and AWS and lays out a roadmap to catch up with TSMC and Samsung by 2025. Intel said on Monday its factories will start building Qualcomm chips and laid out a roadmap to expand its new foundry business in the Arizona area, where they have multiple big factories being built. And Paul Moser out of China, who covers China for the New York Times, if I remember correctly, or he did until all the kind of Western media got kicked out of China. I'm just clicking on his Twitter account. Yes, he did cover tech in Asia for New York Times, based in China until all the Western media got kicked out of China when about 9 months ago or so. And anyway, so he says about this issue, hugely important shift in the chip industry as Intel begins again to fab chips for outside firms like Qualcomm, as they're saying, and also for what was the other one? AWS, Amazon Web Services. And it has an uphill battle to compete with TSMC. He's right about that. But if it succeeds, it would also be geopolitically significant. Yep, balancing the world's reliance on Taiwanese chips. Yeah, exactly, Paul. As usual, you got that right. So Paul's fantastic, by the way, to follow on Twitter, having covered Asia for the New York Times Tech in China while it was still possible to do so. He was one of the last people out, actually. And he's a friend of David Chang, who comes in here from time to time. Turns out they're buddies as well. So, although that might not be surprising when you know David is very well connected in China. So, that's the big headline, that Intel is ramping up with big clients like Qualcomm and Amazon, making chips for them. And they say they have a plan to get to 1 nanometer chips, which indeed would put them right up there with TSMC. And maybe, who knows, they might even, you know what, they're not going to get Apple, because Apple's way too focused on doing their own chips at this point. They're really going for kind of chip independence from everybody, and with their M1 chips, and and they're doing a fantastic job with that, man. It's so much so that I think it's put a fire under Google's ass to really get their own chip game in order. Because you can really start to do kind of magical stuff when you are making the whole stack, as it's, in terms of hardware and software, and the hardware down into the actual chips. So that's the top headline at this moment. And Instagram, the number 2 headline at this moment, is from NBC News, although covered from many other outlets. It says Instagram announces changes for teen accounts, including making them private by default. There you go, Instagram. That wasn't so hard, was it? Well done. That's pretty good there. Including making them private by default, restricting messages from suspicious adults, and limiting ads. We did it. There it is. Good job on you guys, Instagram. You guys, you deserve 2 claps for that one. Instagram has introduced protections for its teenage users to default young people into private accounts and make it harder for bad people to do bad things with teenagers, is the headline. The move follows pushback at launch of an Instagram service for children under 13. And that makes all the sense in the world, but Instagram has introduced protections for its teenage young people into private accounts and make it harder for suspicious, quote unquote, suspicious adults to make unwanted contact, the company announced Tuesday. Instagram, the photo sharing app owned by Facebook, has also restricted targeting options for advertisers who want to promote their products to teen users. Creating an experience on Instagram that's safe and private for young people, but also fun, comes with competing challenges. The company said in a blog post announcing the changes, we want them to easily make new friends and keep up with their interests, but we don't want them to deal with unwanted DMs or comments from strangers. And this is yet another example of a problem that would be very easily solved by identity verification, where Instagram would then actually know the actual ages of all of its users and could block out people over 15 from contacting people under 13 or what have you, just as an example. Now, there is, of course, very obvious downsides to doing identity verification systems across, the internet, but there are actually lots of potential upsides as well, and this is certainly a point worth debating because it looks like it may happen in our lifetime, if not by the end of the year. At the way things are going, so that's the headline. And again, kudos to Instagram for that one. Let's see what the how the other tech outlets and publishers are spinning this headline. Bloomberg says Facebook reduces advertising targeting to teens. Engadget says Facebook and Instagram will limit advertisers' ability to target teens, so they're throwing in Facebook in the mix of that. NPR says Instagram debuts new safety settings for teenagers. Okay. Wall Street Journal says Instagram adds more protections for teens. Yeah, pretty. And then Instagram says giving young people a safer, more private experience. Okay. So number 3 headline at this very moment is 1Password, which is an independent platform to store all of your passwords from all the other apps in the universe, raises $100 million led by Excel at a $2 billion valuation after raising $200 million in 2019, and says it now has 90,000 business customers. All of the sessions from Transform 2021 are available on demand now. Watch now. Password management platform 1Password has raised $100 million from Excel. And kudos to 1Password for that. Element, a messaging app built on top of decentralized protocol Matrix, raises $30 million from Protocol Labs and others, bringing total to $48 million in this series from all the sessions. Oh, I see what's going on here. These last 2 articles both happen to be related to a tech event that many tech journalists are at, or at least VentureBeat is at, because they wrote both of those articles. And those articles are being released from that event. And let me take a minute to explain something that I'm uniquely positioned to share with everybody, which is, as a tech conference producer myself for many years, over a decade, one of the benefits, one of the ways that tech events get tech journalists and big tech names to come is you get the journalists to come because you tell them, oh, we're going to have a whole bunch of breaking news happen on stage. And it's going to happen live on stage. And if you're in the audience, and then you can announce it as soon as it's announced on stage. And we might even give you backstage in the press room the text, the kind of the PR announcement, so that you can start writing your blog post preemptively, but you're not able to publish your post until they actually make the actual announcement verbally on stage. That's kind of like an embargo of sorts. And they love that. They love going to places where they know there's going to be noteworthy breaking news. And that's how you can get a lot of top tech journalists to show up to your event, which is great because then your event gets a lot of coverage, as this event just did in the last 2 headlines, called Transform 2021, which I had not heard of until these last 2 headlines mentioned that Both of those headlines clearly happened at that event. Now, once you get a whole bunch of tech press lined up, committed to attend your event, and it's free for them to attend. Press don't have to pay to attend tech events. You give them a press pass. And then, assuming they're legitimate press, of course, and a lot of people are going to say that they are bloggers who are, worth getting a press pass, and generally they're not. So don't fall for that. But if you do get the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and, BBC and DW from Germany and, whoever else, South China Morning Post, and you get all your favorite tech journalists show up, then you do get other entrepreneurs who are very interested in speaking at the event because you got a room full of, big tech press, and you can start calling up big tech companies, like Facebook, and talk to their communications team and say, hey, you're the comms team. If you have any kind of headlines coming up in the week of, the third week of September, I'm going to have an event with a lot of press there. And, you can show it, on stage, and use it as your sort of your own event with a big live audience, with a bunch of tech press. And so that's sort of the secret sauce of how the sausage gets made at tech events like this one, Transform 2021. So there you go. Just a little inside scoop. So the next big story is Facebook announces a new Metaverse product group with plans to hire hundreds of staff, led by Instagram VP Vishal Shah, reporting to the VR AR VP Andrew Bosworth. The company plans to hire hundreds of new staff for the group. Facebook is all in on the Metaverse, which indeed they are. And it's a huge opportunity. And Mark Zuckerberg himself calls it the follow-up to the smartphone era, basically. The smartphone mobile era, or whatever he referred to it as. That's the essence of his quote that I'm kind of going off of memory on. And he's right. And it's very interesting to look at this over the past many years, where we had Windows 95 was the official kickoff of the desktop era in 1995. And that lasted until the next big era, which was the smartphone era, which launched officially with the launch of the smartphone, the iPhone in 2007. So from 95 to 2007, you had 12 years of the PC era. And then you had the smartphone era, which went from the launch of the iPhone in 2007 until whenever Apple announces their VR headset, which and we're now being told by Robert Scoble and such, we got an update earlier today, 7 hours ago when we met previously, that it looks like they're going to announce it at WWDC in, when's WWDC? April? So now it was expected they were going to announce it at their annual September event, where Apple traditionally launches their iPhone every year and gives the press all gather to see the new iPhone. And no doubt they're going to do that again this September. The question is, are they also using that event, their September iPhone event that they do every year, to reveal their AR, VR, MR headset? And the latest speculation is it probably won't be ready for the September event, which means they'll do it in their April event, which is WWDC, which is the big, actually WWDC is more like May and June, late May, early June. And that's where all the developers get together. And we live streamed the WWDC event here in Clubhouse as a group together. And it was fun to watch together. And we watched Huawei sneak into the UFO campus of Apple, as Johan keenly pointed out. And it was a very, very fun event. And if we have to wait until then, to me, that will likely be the official kickoff of this VR era. Although, as Apple is known for being a bit slow, having the last mover advantage on things like this, and they know they play a significant role in these things, but Facebook is not waiting up for Apple. Facebook's going to go charging forward up the hill and be the first mover advantage of sorts, and just plowing right ahead. Apple be damned. And they're going to storm the beach all by themselves with and creating this new Metaverse product group with hundreds of team members. This is going to become the new focus of Facebook, is how they want to be the leader in the Metaverse, which is the new platform, the PC era, the smartphone era, the Metaverse era. And they want to be, now check this out. If you remember the PC era, it was basically Windows, which was Microsoft, versus Apple, right? And then the smartphone era was Apple, and then Google came in. So it was Apple and Google. Microsoft didn't really play a role in that one. And now we're going into the metaverse era, which is obviously Facebook is in it for the first time because they missed out on the smartphone era. They tried, by the way, for those of you who don't know, they did try to do a smartphone. It just didn't work. And by the way, Apple tried one. Apple did the iPhone, but there was an attempt to try and collaborate with Apple before the iPhone, and that didn't work either. But anyway, in the metaverse era, clearly Facebook is kind of got the head start. Clearly, Apple's going to play in that. Clearly, Google's going to play in that. Snapchat's playing in that. Niantic, the makers of Pokemon Go, have their own headset. There's going to be a whole lot of players, but and HTC seems to have this very clever strategy to focus on enterprise use cases like the military and hospitals and all of these very professional use cases. But Facebook is going to go for the mass consumer use case. No doubt Google will too. And that's where we're at. And Facebook is just chomping at the bit to go big now. They don't want to wait up for Apple on this one. And kudos to them. They really got the fire under their ass because they sorely missed the iPhone era, or let's say the smartphone era. And somewhat fortunate for them, they only got blocked out. I mean, they benefited from the smartphone era. Let's be clear about that. And because of all of the data that came from your devices, your smartphones, your Android and your iPhones, Facebook used that data to enhance and enrich their ad network. Okay, great. Until relatively recently, in the past 6 months, now Apple and Google are kind of closing the data drawbridge on Facebook, which really threatens their traditional business as an ad network. But that's okay because simultaneously they have two whole new massive undertakings underway. One is the social commerce of making Facebook now a commerce portal where everyone's going to be selling everything. Like everyone's becomes their own little Amazon store inside of Facebook and Instagram. Okay. And WhatsApp, all three. And if that wasn't enough, they also have this whole new, VR, AR, metaverse, kind of roadmap ahead of them. And it's going to be huge. And they're running full steam ahead while Apple, is still back at the gym training. Facebook is already on the marathon trail, already running, shoes on, all suited up, and Apple's, brushing its teeth back in the locker room, taking its sweet ass time. So we'll see how this plays out. I like the spunk that Facebook is bringing to this new platform era. By the way, there is arguably another platform era beginning, which is the battle between Siri and Alexa and Google Home, or the Google Assistant. And that itself is a platform. And that's the assistant battle. And they want it. That's what is going to be inside of your car and inside of your house and inside of your office and maybe even your stores at some point. There's going to be microphones everywhere. And boy, did we have an interesting conversations about microphones in cities when we had our last meeting about 7 hours ago, because there's a startup. One of the biggest stories is a startup called ShotSpotter. And the article, let's find this article from ShotSpotter and recap this for the folks who were not present, because boy, is this a really interesting story, is it not, Cal?
A little worrying.
It's a little concerning.
Yeah. Civilians.
Yeah. So it's here it is. So this article from Vice, that I will tweet out for your convenience to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW, because you're going to think I'm making this shit up. That's how crazy this story is. So basically, there's a company called ShotSpotter, which, if you go to shotspotter.com, that's the website. I'm going to read you how they present themselves, and you're not going to believe this. Right place, right time is the big words on the top of the site. Precision policing solutions that help save lives, solve cases, and deter crime, making communities safer. And then it says, state of the art, the first end-to-end precision policing platform. ShotSpotter's precision policing platform helps local, state, and federal law enforcement respond to, investigate, and deter crime. The technology suite embodies the renowned precision policing philosophy. So now police agencies have access. It says agencies, and it could be government agencies as well. And they even say they sell to governments in addition to police agencies. So let's call it agencies. So now agencies have access to timely and accurate intelligence, can more rapidly and precisely deploy resources to respond to crime as well as proactively prevent it. Huh? How are they going to prevent crime proactively? Explain that. Well, we're going to explain that right now. The platform is highly data-driven and includes community protections and engagement opportunities to help improve police-community relations. And they're kind of cagey. They don't quite come right out and say what they do. What they do is they put microphones all throughout the city, and then they use algorithms to triangulate the location and time and type of concerning sound if there's a gunshot or a car crash or a scream or a yell. And then they are the extended ears of the police force, essentially. And so this came into the news recently, but now hopefully this all makes more sense, and they try and triangulate where the sound came from, and they try to use, like a Shazam for sounds to determine if it was a gun and what kind of gun it might have been, and if it was a car backfiring or a firework, or tries to distinguish from the audio signatures of those sounds and find the sound and, of course, the time of sound. And indeed, this could be remarkably brilliantly helpful in showing on a map and time of day and time of the month and where police should be allocating their resources into troubled areas. Okay, that actually sounds kind of brilliant. And it could you could also gain insight into officer activity. It says it can help. Here's what it says. Here's how it helps you as a police department. Enable rapid and precise police response to gunfire. So even before a 911 call even happens, you knew the shot happened the second it happened. And you know exactly where it happened. It kind of should show you on a map, right? So it also improves evidence recovery, proactively impact gun violence, improve case clearance rates for all crime types, analytical and collaboration tools reduce time to solvability, and build courtroom-ready cases. Oh boy, hold that thought. And then automate directed patrol planning for highest impact. I love that part, like optimize your resources because you have limited number of police and cars, Gain insight into officer activity. That's an interesting one. Are they listening to the conversations on certain street corners? Deter crime and improve community engagement. Okay, that sounds cool, but how's this all work exactly? And indeed, it's hidden microphones. And are they listening to conversations, or are they just looking for sounds? And now this Vice article that I just tweeted out, what's so interesting about this is the following. Prosecutors in Chicago are being forced to withdraw evidence generated by ShotSpotter in a court case, which led to the police killing a 13-year-old Adam Toledo earlier this year. And it says, in May last year, Saffron Herring was shot in the head and dropped off at St. Bernard Hospital in Chicago by a man named Michael Williams. And then the person who was delivered to the hospital died 2 days later. Chicago police eventually arrested the person who dropped the person off at the hospital and charged him with murder. But the person who dropped off the victim maintains that the victim was hit in a drive-by shooting and was not, in fact, the person who shot him. Which, by the way, that would be a little strange to shoot somebody in the head and then take them to the hospital. I mean, that just on the face of that sounds a little strange. But nonetheless, they arrested and are now pursuing a murder case against the guy who brought the victim to the hospital. Hold that.
That does happen, actually, Tyler. Some people get. It does happen. There are a few stories of that where someone gets a strange and immediate remorse after they've done something like that, and then rush the person they've just injured to the hospital. It's not that uncommon, actually.
Okay, appreciate that.
Hey,
Yeah, the
hey,
next.
this is I wanted to say this technology has been actually I've deployed it already in Baltimore County and Baltimore City.
Mm-hmm,
It's been around for 10 years. Actually, the microphones are in the cameras, like they have overt and covert cameras,
mm-hmm,
and those and the ones that are sitting on the mounds already have like microphones built in. They're actually from France,
mm-hmm,
and the way the sound works, there's already like certain sounds that the algorithm is already, because it's machine learning, it's already accustomed to certain different sounds. We can tell like the type of gun it was, like
mm-hmm,
everything
mm,
from that, and also the audio from the body worn camera. And there's no way sharpshooter is going to be independent of itself, because it has to connect to the GIS as well as the CAD system
mm-hmm,
with 911. So the
mm-hmm,
way it works is there actually is a watchtower where there's the watchers that are retired police officers, and the feed comes up if something's happening in the area. It is immediately deployed to 911 and the police officers at the same time, because you have to have a
mm-hmm,
record of the situation with 911. And
mm-hmm,
from there, all of the recording starts to happen from there,
mm-hmm,
as well as all the cameras in the vicinity is like handed up, is given to the police officers. So they'll have all the cameras in this particular radius
mm-hmm.
at the same time, and it goes straight to their tough pad in the car.
Cool.
That's how it works.
Well, we love that you. Thank you for sharing that, El. Indeed,
Yeah.
the company does say they have they were operating in 100 cities, and they have been around for quite a while. They're kind of upfront about that, and I'm sure there's more than one solution. And in fact, I
Yeah, it
got
may have been Vidsys or Motorola at the time, but
uh-huh.
yeah, probably Vidsys.
I recently had a startup pitch me this precise product for Europe, which I'm curious how that might work in Europe. But anyway, here's where it gets this.
Tyler,
Yes.
I'd like to add also that a form of this type of technology has been implemented in schools by Soder Technologies. The reason why I know this is because I wrote about it years ago and interviewed the CEO. And what it does is an anti-bullying and anti-vaping device that they installed in bathrooms, so that let's just say somebody's screaming or yelling, that could remotely flag an issue. So there can be some beneficial uses in areas where cameras are not allowed.
Great point. I love that, by the way, because for 1 year I taught in LA County's LA Unified School District, LAUSD's absolute least how do I phrase this? The schools that no other teachers will teach at, where they literally can't
Yeah, the
get.
forgotten schools.
Yeah, they literally can't get anyone to go cover those schools. And I was living in downtown LA at that time, and I wanted to teach computer classes, and they said, "Sure, oh great, we got the school for you?" I was like, "Sure, send me there. I'm on it." And I actually loved it, and it's kind of unique because kids love computers. It's not like teaching math. They're much easier to teach with a computer in front of them than China. So in all fairness, I did cover some math classes for teachers who had days off, and I covered English classes and history classes. I worked as a sub for when teachers all have to cover each other, because there's
Thank you, Tyler, for doing
a
that.
huge
Seriously.
shortage of
Yeah,
teachers.
seriously,
No, no,
Tyler.
no,
Such
Yeah,
good
thank you.
stuff.
no,
I know you're not doing it, but thank you.
no thanks needed. It's one of the most valuable things I ever did in my life. So it needs no thanks at all. I'm thanking myself that I took it on myself to do it. I'd encourage anyone else to do it as well. So it's one of the most enriching things I've ever done. And talk about getting out of your comfort zone and wild. And so check this out. In those schools, it's very common for students to have ankle bracelets and court cases that they often have to miss class for. Incredibly common. And they have to go to the parole officers very regularly, like twice a week and stuff. So you have students missing class all the time. It's kind of chaotic. And, things get very violent on a daily basis. And
And Tyler, this was a continuation school?
No, this was a LA Unified School District, high school and middle school that were kind of
Was
across
it
the street.
was it the alternative school, like from
No,
the alternative schools? Oh, just regular public.
it's just a regular public high school and middle school. So when I had one of the very first digital cameras that ever came out, portable digital cameras, and I used to sneak it in my pocket into the classroom and set it down on the desk because that was the only way to get the kids to behave, is knowing that the whole thing's being recorded. And I know that was against the law, and I could have gotten a lot of deep doo-doo for doing that. had any of the students ever, kind of revealed that. But it did it for my own safety, because a lot of time I have my back to the class and I'm looking at the board or whatever. But it works. It worked really, really well. It kept the kids in good behavior, because I used to tell them, I'm recording this and I'm going to send it to your mom, as soon as this class ends, if anything goes wrong. So, but the idea of using microphones, like you said, you're not allowed to use cameras in these classes, which, by the way, if we could ever make a documentary of what's going on in these schools in South Central LA and in parts of Philadelphia, I know are quite serious, and Baltimore and others, I really wish the world could see what's going on in these schools. And I believe there would be a huge upswell of concern and attention to focus on these communities and these schools if people knew what was going on in these schools. And I would love to make a documentary about that. But if you could
There's
only...
not one specifically about all of the schools, but I know they're individual. Like they have individuals. Like there's one about the South Central area, there's one about Philly, and there's one, but there's not one that brings them all together.
Yeah.
To say like this is it's very problematic in all
yeah.
the areas, because like Cami, I actually deployed all the cameras between Baltimore City and Baltimore County in the schools to tie into the for the SROs who are on-site police officers. So I'm kind of interested about hearing about that audio thing in the bathrooms. But yes, the same, it's like night and day, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, they're like 5 minutes apart. And you would think that they're worlds apart just based upon the quality of education between both of them. It's like ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah.
By the way, Tyler, a quick question.
Yeah.
Law prohibits the recording. What about the actual live monitoring?
Live streaming. I guess
it's whether or not you're saving it, and it depends on the school district. If you get enough pushback from the parents, it can be problematic. But because of the uptick of school shootings, parents have been wanting more active monitoring. So the SROs, unless a situation happens, they can only monitor what's in the hallways. And these are the police officers that are assigned to the area for that school. They can monitor what's in the hallways. They can monitor outside the school, but they cannot monitor actually in the classroom, because that's a privacy issue with the kids.
Yeah. What? Yeah, that's why I thought maybe audio might be doable, and that's when someone was explaining audio. I was like, oh, that might be a clever workaround.
Yeah, it depends on where you are.
Yeah,
it depends on where you are, especially in the bathroom. Maybe in the classrooms and everywhere else, but in the bathroom, it's still problematic because there's certain things you hear and it's like personal. So it depends, but yeah, it depends on your school district.
So let's get back to this story, though, about these microphones in Chicago and this case of a police shooting. And it says that a key piece of evidence in this case is video surveillance footage showing Williams' car. And Williams is the guy who dropped off the victim at the hospital. So the video surveillance footage showed Williams' car stopped at the 6300 block of South Stony Island Avenue at 11:46 p.m. The time and location where police say they know Herring was shot. So how did they know that? Well, that's what the article says. How did they know that's where the shooting happened? Police said ShotSpotter, a surveillance system that uses hidden microphone sensors to detect the sound and location of gunshots, generated an alert for that time and place. However, except that's not entirely true according to recent court filings. That night, 19 ShotSpotter sensors detected a percussive sound at 11:46 p.m. and determined the location to be 5700 South Lakeshore Drive, a mile away from the site where the prosecutors say Williams committed the murder. according to a motion filed by Williams' public defender. Good job to that public defender, by the way. That's kind of well done.
No kidding.
The company's algorithms initially classified the sound as a firework. That weekend had seen widespread protests in Chicago in response to George Floyd's murder, and some of those protests lit fireworks. But after 11:46 p.m., alert came in. A ShotSpotter human analysis manually overrode the algorithms and reclassified the sound as a gunshot. Then, months later, after post-processing, another ShotSpotter human analyst changed the alert's coordinates to a location on South Stony Island Drive near Williams's car, where the car was seen on the camera, a mile away. Through this human-involved method, the ShotSpotter output in this case was dramatically transformed from data that did not support the criminal charges of any kind to data that now forms the centerpiece of the prosecutor's murder case against Mr. Williams. The public defender wrote in a motion. Who is this guy? This guy deserves the full-on... This is a fantastic public defender, by the way. So, the document is what's known as the Fry motion, a request for a judge to examine and rule on whether a particular forensic method is scientifically valid enough to be entered as evidence, rather than defend ShotSpotter's technology and its employees' actions in a Fry hearing. The prosecutors withdrew all ShotSpotter evidence against Williams. So now their case is kaput, out. The case isn't an anomaly, and the pattern it represents could have huge ramifications for ShotSpotter in Chicago, where the technology generates an average of 21,000 alerts per year. The technology is also currently in use in more than 100 cities. Motherboard's review of court documents from the Williams case and other trials in Chicago and New York, including testimony from ShotSpotter's favorite expert witnesses, suggest that the company's analysts frequently modify alerts at the request of police departments, some of which appear to be grasping for evidence that supports their narrative of events. Ouch. Oh.
Not reliable. Not reliable.
Oh.
Totally not reliable.
And so now some very beautiful journalists got to do what journalists do and go back into every case where somebody went to prison due to evidence where ShotSpotter was kind of the smoking gun, no pun intended, in the prosecutor's evidence, and go back and do this deconstruction of the facts and see how many of these people were put behind bars unjustly. This is truly wild. So, there is the other interesting questions of how are these microphones being used in ways, that could also be unintuitive. And somebody DM'd me when we talked about this earlier, saying that ShotSpotter might have connections to what's it called, Pegasus and whatnot. And then we kind of started investigating this on stage, and I think Ken, more than anybody, was earnest in trying to get to the roots of that accusation, and it doesn't seem to stand up to initial scrutiny, I think is the way to phrase it. Would that be fair, Ken?
Well, yeah. Well, there was only one person who made that claim, right? So,
well, there was another person on stage who also had was of the same mind, that they, I don't want to support their claims because they're unsubstantiated at this point. And
are you talking about the Pegasus navigation and tracking product? That one?
Yeah, the big Pegasus hack that happened recently, where it was, being sold as, spyware, and it was being used as spyware, but it's opening the idea that this startup might also have similar origins, would certainly cause lots of concerns that, there's now surveillance happening by agencies. I think it's caused some paranoia amongst some people. Yeah, go ahead,
Tyler,
Chris.
If we zoom out, isn't this essentially what Ring's doing with
I mentioned that
installs, right?
No,
and they're going to come up with the algorithms to process that on the back end. So I'm curious if there's any Amazon involvement in the promotion of this news story.
Yeah, the Ring has a history pre-Amazon of giving video footage to police officers without the Ring owners knowing it.
But I mean, what I'm saying is that, right now, actually, I'm not in law enforcement, but I'm assuming that there's a little bit of work that goes into, retrieving the videos. I'm sure at this time they've come up with a tool where, via GIS or via geolocation, they can ring, so to speak, all of the cameras up really quickly. Like I'm imagining when they first started, it was very clunky. It's like, well, let's see if there's a subscriber here, and let's go grab footage from that one. And so, like, I think by now they've gotten so big that they probably have this like footprint or graph of everywhere they have locations, and they probably have some kind of algorithm to assist the police, is what I'm getting at. They just have the advantage of having so many installations now, that they would destroy a company like ShotSpotter like really quickly.
But
My concern would be about the there's still a privacy issue when like trying to get access. So I wonder what the what's the contract between the ring provider and the actual purchaser, the customer who has that ring, because technically, so ring has a radius of just your doorstep, and technically you're not supposed to be recording outward towards your towards the street. That's illegal. Like, you can't have cameras facing the street. You can have cameras facing your house, but you can't have cameras facing your street. And then on top of that, the city or even the police officers, they have to request that footage. And if it belongs to a person, I can only say that because we follow the law, at least to the T here. They're supposed to request it. So I would be interested to know what the agreement is between the customer whose data that is and Ring. Is it once it go to their cloud, they own it and that's it? Or there is some type of nuance with that? Like, I don't know, maybe you get those free services. Tyler always talking about how free isn't always free. Maybe that's what it is, but I would want to know what that agreement is.
Was this in one of the
I have
Batman
actually a
movies?
theory over how they actually can know where all the cameras are, since the company that mostly sell them are Amazon themselves through their services. And it just so happens that they usually get delivered by an Amazon truck, and the Amazon trucks has a unique ID per se where they are, what number they have, so you actually can call and say, car, this number actually tried to run over my dog. And so I think they have a pretty good, not only geolock on it, I think they actually know in which direction the cameras are pointing, if they can see the driveway, if they can see the pavement, if they can see the passing Amazon trucks and other cars as well. You undone.
Okay. But it does lead to, with these surveillance technologies, that I think America is going to start becoming conscious of, post Pegasus, is going to cause a wake up internationally about, in the case of an app like this, is where, same with TikTok, Trump got, excited about, this is a Chinese company and it has, cameras and microphones, and what happens when military personnel are using TikTok on a military base, and what happens, are there conversations being listened to, and yada yada yada. And similarly, I think countries everywhere are going to start asking themselves, where should we allow apps from our allies and our enemies and our adversaries, maybe is a better word, and which countries are we going to allow apps from into our geography? Similar to how India is no longer allowing Chinese apps, but currently India is allowing American apps, but maybe they wouldn't allow, what will Russia allow or not allow? What will India allow, not allow? What will America allow, not allow? I think they're starting, just like they're becoming conscious of what we talked about, the sovereign cloud issue. And let's just unpack that for 2 seconds again, for those who might be joining for the first time, is countries are starting to realize, all of our government data, which is everything from, public schools and public universities and the traffic department and the tax agency and the police departments and, the library system and, everything. all government data, all capital ALL, bold, italicized, all caps, all government data must be on sovereign data servers in our geography with no access from outside, essentially. And in fact, India is telling MasterCard exactly that. And they've shut down MasterCard in India from accepting new accounts until they comply with, a kind of sovereign cloud of storing all of the Indian users' data in India and can guarantee there's no access from outside. That's sovereign cloud. That's kind of what we're talking about. And governments are starting to understand the importance of data and treating data similar to physical goods, where they tax physical goods that come in and out of especially coming into their country. And they're very, very careful about the people coming into the country and the goods coming into the country. And now they want to be very, very careful about the data coming into and out, and especially out of the country. And that's the whole sovereign cloud issue, is they want to make sure they understand where things are being stored, and or if there's copies in other locations and what have you. And now this is an extension of that same idea of sovereign clouds, is apps from around the world. Should we allow apps from the Ukraine into our territory, wherever you happen to be? Or should we every country is going to start asking those questions, and especially technologies that involve surveillance, where there's microphones or cameras and those kinds of things. So it's a really interesting concept. So anyway,
Most countries are not going to have a choice because the 180 something countries in the world, most of them are not going to be able to develop their own stuff, so they're going to have to rely
fair point.
on stuff.
That's a luxury problem. Yeah.
I have another thing to chime in regarding what this call actually started with. This with counter sniper equipment. This is actually things that have been around all the way since the Second World War. We did see it in a large-scale rollout during the siege of Belgrade, during the Sarajevo Wars and Serbian Wars. They actually, Americas brought counter sniper equipment there. And you can not only predict, even with the 90s and 80s equipment, you can actually predict what caliber, where the point of ordering of the bullet, as well as where it hit. And they could do that by a meter near at that time. Today's the counter sniper equipment that are equipped on the Humvees in Afghanistan and where in Iraq, they could actually tell what kind of weapon that actually fired it, the caliber of the gun, by just measuring the sound wave that when it hit the different microphones all over the city. You weren't done speaking. The thing is here, Sweden is actually looking at these kind of equipment for our no-go zones in Gothenburg, Malmö and Stockholm right now to detect bomb blasts and gunshots and automatic fire. So this is a very hot topic in Sweden right now, not even that though the community know about it. You weren't done.
You could even say it's kind of an explosive topic. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Ow!
It's like an explosive issue. So the next big headline from the top down is that the FCC challenges a bid won by SpaceX for $886 million in rural broadband subsidies. Concerned some of the spending may be wasteful, duplicative, or headed for other uses. Company is among 197 winning bidders to get letters from FCC. Agency says it's cleaning up results from auctions last year. Kind of a boring one, but anyway, the next big one says Fireblocks, which lets users store, transfer, and issue digital assets, raises $310 million from Sequoia at a $2.2 billion valuation. The store, transfer, and issue digital assets. Interesting. A lot to unpack there. And then the next one says Pinterest announces monetization tools. Where's my cash register? There it is. Pinterest announces monetization tools for creators, including tagging products in idea pins to earn commissions, available to US and UK business accounts. There it is. The creator economy. Here it comes. Are you ready? Did you hear that sound? That's the sound of you not giving us a poop about somebody liking or following your profile. You want them to buy, baby, buy my stuff, make daddy some money, right? That's where this is all headed. And I've been telling you this is coming for many months now. And here it is. Here's the headline. Pinterest is going, and I'm going to tweet this out so that you can actually see what the future of social commerce looks like in the case of Pinterest. And Pinterest is just this coming to all the apps. And by the way, Pinterest has done this. They previously had announced it's a partnership with Shopify. But TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and WhatsApp, Facebook, they are all jumping on this gravy train because this is money, dollar bills, y'all. Pinterest is going after the influencer market. Well, guess what, Pinterest? So is every social app on the planet. The platform announced its first set of tools today that let content creators earn money by promoting items from around the site. The platform is adding support for affiliate links, letting creators get a cut of purchases they drive. It also adding product tagging to its story like idea pins. So it's their version of Instagram stories to drive sales from more places. And it's adding a new paid partnerships label to support sponsorships with idea pins. The updates come a few months after the platform launched a $500,000 fund for BIPOC creators and sharpens the company's focus on shopping as other platforms like Instagram start to take on shopping too. Told you. Businesses can already upload product pins to Pinterest, which allow people to click through to find and then buy a product. Creators will now be able to browse these available product pins and integrate them into their idea pins, thereby making content with the product and making it easier for potential buyers to understand what they're seeing and how to use it. The creators can also add their own affiliate links to these tags, allowing them to make money off of the products sold. It's all a way to promote shopping on the platform. And I told you. Did I not tell you? How many times did I tell you? Over the past 3 months, how it will work is the influencers are going to be able to drive the visibility to Aunt Betty's Cake Shop. Aunt Betty's Cake Shop got herself a little Pinterest account and an Instagram account and a TikTok account and a Snapchat account, and she's got no followers. But it doesn't matter because the platforms are going to connect them with the influencers, and the influencers are going to be more than happy to send their viewers to Aunt Betty's Cake Shop because they're going to get a cut of the sale. That's precisely what I just read. And there it is.
I'm just surprised that how come they have not done this long time ago when it was possible? All along. This affiliate marketing thing.
It's a good question. They could have done it earlier.
I think they were milking the ad fraud and all the click fraud from the bots, to be honest.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. I mean, that was their game for a long time. They were hyper focused on optimizing, kind of the traditional ad marketplace type behavior. And now they got to shift gears, and change is tough. And now they just got to rejigger everything, and they've now done that. And here we go. We're now entering the new era of social shopping.
Because like if you try to start a business, right, like you spend so much on those clicks. It's like insane sometimes. You like spend more on the clicks than you do on the products half the time.
It's also one of these things where if life's good, I mean, why change it? It's the old, getting fat and lazy kind of mentality. And until you are provoked into change.
Those people working there are salaryman mindset.
Well, I mean, just
they've lost their drive until someone provoked them.
Yeah, they get provoked and a little disrupted, and their ad model gets disrupted because Google and Apple, those meanies are taking their cookies and running home and not sharing all that sweet cookie sweet cookie data. And so now everyone's realizing, okay, the whole ad network model is kind of getting shaken up a bit. Time to plan B. We're going to do social commerce because there's a whole lot of lemons on that social commerce tree worth squeezing. So that's what's happening. And they're even going to start competing with each other, which you just heard. They even have funds now that they're using to entice the creators, because now the creators got to decide, okay, am I going to YouTube to focus on the stuff I want to sell, or to Pinterest, or to Instagram, or Snapchat, or whatever? And the answer is, ultimately, you're going to do all of them as a creator, and you're certainly going to test all of them. And then there will eventually be new platforms that allow you to push your content to all of them simultaneously and track all the related data from all of the insights and analytics from all of them, and merge them all so you can see side by side where you're getting the best, bang for your buck in terms of a platform. So the next big headline is a look at the risks posed by rising sea water levels at Facebook, Google, and other Silicon Valley campuses, and questions over who pays to protect them, from NPR. Ooh, this is right up my alley. By the way, this is my kind of article, and it starts with This is what a hell of a web page they made for this one with NPR. You got to see this. You open up the web page, and it starts with an absolute full screen video, edge to edge screen, top to bottom, left to right, of the Dunbarton Bridge going between Sunnyvale and Fremont, basically. Anyone who's ever gone across the Dumbarton Bridge, it's just the connection, one of the main arteries in Silicon Valley, and which most Google a lot of the employees at a lot of the Silicon Valley companies commute over that bridge every day. Anyway, so it says coastal cities need billions of dollars to build defenses against sea level rise. Tensions are growing over where that funding will come from, taxpayers or private companies with waterfront property. Ooh, that's such a good question. Why should I have to pay for your dumb ass that bought beachfront property? In the heart of Silicon Valley, the world's biggest tech companies are expanding their headquarters on the edges of the San Francisco Bay. Absolutely true. Right there near the Dunbarton Bridge, where Google's built off Shoreline Amphitheater and their whole new campus is right there. Oh, what do you know? The next page shows precisely this, where Facebook campus is and Google campus is. By the way, I've never been more encouraging of somebody to go look at a tweet that we just twatted on Twitter of this article from NPR about the sea level rise. Please go look at this story and do it on either a phone or a laptop, ideally a laptop. And what an incredibly brilliant way to do a story visually, especially when it gets to the actual map of where the Google campus is and where the Facebook campus is on the map of San Jose, just west of the Dumbarton Bridge, right? And you can see how they're right there on the waterfront. And indeed, they will be the first to have to relocate when the water levels start rising. It says Google has bought more than 70 properties in the past 5 years in Sunnyvale to expand its campus, worth almost $3 billion. And then further north, Facebook has acquired properties now worth more than $2.5 billion in the last decade, right on the water's edge, by the way. I mean, literally at sea level. The company has built a state-of-the-art campus designed by world-renowned architect Frank Gehry, which is arguably the most expensive architect in the world, which means they spent a very pretty penny on that campus, which is at water level. Nearby, some of the low-income communities in Silicon Valley are also vulnerable to flooding, like East Palo Alto. In just a few decades, sea level rise could rise almost 2 feet, flooding the area if a major storm hits. And I think it's more appropriate to say it will happen. Matter of fact, I'm willing to bet anybody that will happen. Map shows 1.7 feet of sea level rise plus a 20-year storm event with no additional shoreline protection, and it essentially submerges Facebook's whole little city that they're building there. By the end of the century, the risks are even greater. Map shows 4.9 feet of sea level rise plus a 20-year storm event with no additional shoreline protection. And then indeed, Facebook is entirely submerged at that point. Google campus is at risk too, and indeed more than half of their entire campus is submerged at that point. Local governments are planning to build massive levee projects to hold the water back, costing hundreds of millions of dollars. The price is more than they can afford. What's certain, the water is coming. What's not certain, who should pay for it? Although I think it is certain in this case who should pay for those levee constructions. If you're paying Frank Gehry, the world's most expensive architect, to build your campus, yeah, I think you can save a little bit to pay for the water wall. The entrance to Facebook's headquarters in Menlo Park is marked by a piece of Silicon Valley iconography. It's huge, thumbs up, blah, blah, blah. But you get the idea of the story. But do go to the website. What a brilliant way to tell a story visually and see what's really going on at the ground level with drone footage flying above Facebook's campus and Google's campus and East Palo Alto and the Dumbarton Bridge, and what happens when the floods come. And wow, what a great piece of journalism, kind of visual journalism. Well done by NPR. Thank you for that, NPR. And that takes us to our next big headline, which is, we're now getting into the last few big ones. Cryptocurrency exchanges called Huobi and OKCoin are closing their subsidiaries in Beijing as China expands its crackdown. Shares of Huobi's parent dropped 22%. So it's another day and another tech company getting slammed by China. How much longer can this go on for? The latest moves of Huobi and OKCoin follow the central government's actions against business related to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. They're just cracking down big time. Next big article, and we've got 3 brand new headlines that are all breaking in the past hour here. Data Robot, which helps companies train and deploy machine learning models, raises $300 million at a $6.3 billion valuation. And that's also from that Transform 2021 event. And then what else do we got here? PsiQuantum, which aims to build a commercial quantum computing machine with 1 million qubits. Come on. Are you yanking my chain? What the? Get out of here with that nonsense. This is way, way ahead of where, the state of the art is at this point. Anyway, they just raised $500 million at a $3.15 billion valuation. The Palo Alto startup says that its approach of using photons as quantum bits will lead to reliable calculations without errors. And God, let's hope so. That would be fantastic. I'm rooting for you. That just seems a little wildly ambitious, 1 million qubits, because the best machines at this point are like 64 qubits. So 1 million. And, Google's at like 32. China says they're at 64. IBM says they're somewhere in between. And so this startup from Palo Alto saying of course, they aim to build a commercial computer with 1 million qubits. If they do manage to do that, that's going to fundamentally change time and reality as we know it. Anyway, New York.
Tyler,
yes.
So has the VC gone mad, or have they gone crazy to give them $500 million?
Well, it depends who the investors were, which it doesn't name, and that's, some investors do due diligence and some do not. And this one, the company is founded by Jeremy O'Brien. Also, this is by BlackRock, and BlackRock generally knows what they're doing when they do investments. Led by funds and accounts managed by BlackRock. Amid increased investor interest in next-generation computing technique. And indeed, quantum is now hot territory for investors in the Valley, and that means they're going to get tons of funding, and that means there's going to be tons of progress made in quantum computing, which is great. I mean, ideally, society will benefit from that in ways that we can't even begin to understand yet. But now that all the money's flowing in, because that's relatively new, that VCs are fighting each other to throw money into quantum computing startups. So, but there you go. Next big one is that
it's kind of like a switch got flipped in the last year, where a lot of things where if you walked into a meeting, people would say you're like way too out there or you're way too early.
Too early, yeah.
It's now becoming like, all right, yeah, I'm nodding. I'm starting to nod my head. You know.
Yeah, on multiple fronts. On this one, on quantum computing, that's certainly one that used to be perceived as being over the horizon, and now it's VC.
Oh yeah, now if you don't talk about space, now you're really behind the 8 ball.
You stole my next one. Space related startups now used to be kind of pie in the sky, and now getting tons of funding. And it's interesting to watch which categories get lots of funding. And we're now kind of at the ripe end of, telehealth or telemedicine. It's almost kind of boring at this point. You're kind of late to the party if you're trying to get into telehealth at this point, especially with Amazon just announcing in the past week their ambitious plans to roll out a telehealth solution nationwide in the next year or so. Good luck competing with that. So, so you've got, ed tech is still going to be huge in the US. And boy, there's a whole lot of ed tech mega investors who just got shut out of China. And so that money is going to likely get reallocated into ed tech in India, because it turns out that India and China made up 70% of the global ed tech market, because Asian parents like their kids getting extra education, apparently.
And we need to remember that not long ago, all those guys were predicting the crash of Tesla, not long ago.
Tyler, this is Vinay. I just tweeted a few minutes ago an exact article to what you said about some of the VCs moving EdTech money to India, and they're already shopping around for new startups.
Guaranteed. This is not rocket science. I mean, VC behaviors are quite understandable and logical. And, it's based on analysis. That's why it's so logical. It's based on data. And, you just look at where the data is, and that's where the money goes, generally. And the food delivery startups is just en fuego hot right now. If you're doing a food delivery, you're getting funded if you do anything like that. Robots is starting to get really hot. That used to be pie in the sky, and now you're seeing a whole bunch of robotic startup getting funded, especially robots that can replace humans in warehouses. Seems to be a particularly hot area. And what else is hot at the moment? Yeah, that's just a few. So, New York-based Bumble. I thought Bumble was based in Austin. Or is this a different Bumble? It's a different Bumble. New York-based Bumble, which offers no-code tools to build web apps, raises...
That's a different Bumble.
That's totally different Bumble. Yeah, the Bumble I'm thinking about is the dating app from Austin. This one is a New York-based Bumble, which does no-code tools to build web apps, raised $100 million by Insight Partners, and says it has over 1 million users globally. Kudos to them. And the no-code area has been hot for quite a while, although it's not en fuego hot, but it's hot. And in its Q2 earnings report, Tesla just did their Q2 earnings report. So here we go, everybody. Hold on to your hats. Tesla says it suffered $23 million in Bitcoin-related impairments after Bitcoin dropped from 63,000 to under 40,000 now. Tesla reported Bitcoin-related impairments of $23 million in the second quarter as crypto prices plunged. Ouch. Tencent says it temporarily suspended WeChat users' registrations in China as it upgrades its system to comply with new security regulations. And but that's a Chinese company, WeChat. So interesting. And then the next big headline is that Apple updates all of its operating systems on all of its devices to address a new zero-day flaw, which would allow hackers to get into your devices, that was reportedly actively exploited, making it the 13th zero-day Apple has patched this year. And that is a pretty damning indictment against Apple's security, which they certainly are not shy about reminding their Apple fan base that they are, security is kind of one of the unique differentiators that they use, against Google and Windows and whatever, Android and Windows.
And that's why you pay 30% when you get in the App Store for that security, right?
That too, yeah. That's to stop bad acting apps in the App Store. But this, you're also paying more for the hardware because ostensibly, there's more protections. It's a more secure system from outside hackers and whatnot. But it's still true relatively. But 13 zero-day exploits in the past year, that's no longer a secure device. That's like, at that point, you've got a Swiss cheese for an iPhone. That thing's full of backdoors and holes. 13 in the first half of this year. That makes it a little too easy for people to get into your device without you ever knowing. That's what a zero-day exploit means. It's like you never knew that you didn't click on anything. You didn't invite it in. It just snuck in. So yeah, quite concerning indeed. But do get your devices updated with the new operating systems that all rolled out today for all your Apple devices. South Africa-based Yoko offers offline and online payment solutions for SMEs, raises $83 million. And indeed, Africa the hot thing is fintech, which is in South America, it will be as well, because you need the fintech layer. It's almost like when you're building a house and you lay the foundation. That's kind of like the communication layer, and then you got the piping on top of that, which is the plumbing, and that's kind of like the fintech layer. And then on top of that, you start, building the house. And now that Africa is building up the fintech layer, really interesting things start to happen after that. So it's interesting to watch that, because then once the payment layer is in there, then you can start doing e-commerce. And that's going to be really interesting in Africa. And, you can do social commerce and all that good stuff that we're seeing blowing up all over India at the moment. According to code found in the Oculus iPhone app, Facebook is exploring letting users synchronize Oculus with data with Apple Health, which is quite surprising given the amount of kind of political friction between Facebook and Apple. But where else are you going to store that health data, I guess, is the question, because Facebook doesn't have a phone and they haven't released their smartwatch yet. So it makes sense that data would need to get stored somewhere and be usable on your iPhone. So other interesting headlines at the moment: China issues regulations for food delivery platforms, mandating minimum wage, respect for workers' rights, and more. Leading Meituan shares to drop 14%. And so now the food delivery companies are getting cracked down on because they've got lots of juicy data about everything people are ordering. And the whole delivery networks of the future is indeed going to be incredibly interesting information that governments are going to want to have a little looky-loo into, and maybe even a little backdoor into. And that's not specific to any one country. I can imagine all kinds of countries. That's going to be some really interesting stuff going on there. And Covariant, which builds AI-powered industrial robots, raises $80 million from Index, which is one of the leading investment VC firms. As I said, robots are hot. What else do we got? London-based Sedna, a service that analyzes emails and chats to perform actions mentioned within them, raises $34 million by Insight Partners. A service that analyzes your emails and chats to perform actions mentioned within them. Oh, like I need to go to the doctor's, and then it puts that on your calendar for you. That could be really interesting. Let's click on that, because if it could intuitively start to understand your conversations that you say your mom messages you and says, "Oh, we need to. Don't forget your dentist appointment next week. Has just been 6 months." And you're like, yeah, Mom, I'll get around to it. And then the app's like, "Hey, you just click here. You want me to add this right now? One click, accept," because it could intuitively understand the conversation. Now that these language learning models are getting so advanced that they intuitively understand the conversations, and we've seen amazing demonstrations of precisely that technology. Is Sean Percival in the room? Get up here on stage,
Well, I'd say
Sean.
Cortana does. Cortana does that now.
Yeah,
I get it at work. Yeah.
Well, most impressively, Google demonstrated this at their Google I/O event. I forget what they call it. No doubt Carl will remember if Carl's on stage. You remember what Google's now calling their version of GPT-3? Jean-Francois, no doubt you recall that.
Which company?
Google's new cutting-edge language recognition system had a cute little name.
No, not Mina.
No, yeah, well, Mina was the old one.
Isn't it Gutana?
No,
was the old one.
Mina was the old one, and they just updated it to something. Anyway, but it intuitively understands the meaning of conversations. And so given that technology exists, it could be listening to your emails and your chats and taking actions on your behalf and saying, "Oh, I understood in your email you needed this done. Click here to accept."
Google Bert?
No, it wasn't Bert. Anyway, but that's really clever, actually. Let's invite Sean Percival on stage, old buddy of mine there. Good to see you back, Sean. And what else do we got? So from that article, I just want to read it to see if it's doing what I think it's going to do. Many have tried to do away with it, but email refuses to die, although in the process it might be, figuratively speaking, killing some of us with the workload it brings onto triage and use. A startup called Sedna has built a system to help with that, specifically for enterprise and other business customers by reading the text and emails and chats and automatically actioning items within them so that you don't have to. And today it starts with $34 million, blah, blah, blah. Let's read the use case here. The funding will be used to blah, 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 whatever. The founder said something clever. I spent years building software to help users be more productive. What really struck me was how long it spent to move items out of and into email, he said, of the to-dos that arose around them. Out of that, Sedona was built to read emails and give them more context and direction. Its system removes duplicates of action items and essentially increases the strike rate when it comes to people's inboxes. What's in there is more likely to be what you really need to see, and it does so very quickly. Our main value is the sheer scale at which we operate. We read millions or even billions of messages in sub-second response times. Indeed, while many of us are not getting millions of emails, there is a world of messaging out there that needs reading beyond that. Think, for example, of the volume of data that will be coming down the pike from IoT-based diagnosis. Smart inboxes have definitely become a thing for consumers. Holy shit, get to the point here, guys. What is your startup doing? Maybe it's faster. I go to their website. They don't seem to have included it in their press release about their fundraising. So Sedna, hold on here. Sedna, are you doing what I think you're doing? Because if so, it's pretty freaking clever. Sedna, Sedna, here it is, sedna.com. Get more work done, not more email. Sedna is an email reimagined and intelligent communication system for high-performance teams that gives more time back to the being efficient. It's just a whole bunch of buzzword bingo on the front of their webpage. Damn it.
Google Lambda, Tyler.
Google Lambda. There it is. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, you got it. So Lambda does understand what the essence of the points, of your communications very intimately. And it absolutely could understand that your mom slyly suggested that you book a dentist appointment because it's been a while. And then Gmail might say, hey, I noticed you're available next week on Wednesday. I went ahead on your behalf and using Google. What was their other technology where they actually called and booked things on your behalf? Was it Duplex? Google Duplex and Lambda together could do all kinds of crazy shit. They could actually, call a dentist and book the appointment over the phone and then add it to your calendar all automagically. All totally doable technology right now between Lambda and Duplex together. That would be fantastic. So anyway, I can't really tell from Sedna's website if they're doing this, and that's kind of their loss. So I guess that's still an opportunity for somebody to jump into that. So next big headlines. Let's first of all welcome an old buddy of mine who just joined on stage, Sean Percival. How are you doing, sir?
Good. I'm actually mostly just listening in. I'm at a restaurant. My food just arrived, but happy to be here.
Where in the world are you?
So I'm in Oslo, and I'm about to fly back to California tomorrow.
Oh, you're at the airport?
Yeah, I'm at the airport. Well, the hotel next to the airport, yeah.
I do love that little salad bar next to the Starbucks at Oslo Airport. Although it's...
Yeah, but it's like pandemic time, so it's like nothing's open. So yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, you have to hunt a bit.
Oh, and they also have that Bit Cafe inside of Oslo Airport.
Oh, I don't know that one, actually.
Yeah,
yeah.
You do, because you Instagrammed it like 3 years ago.
Yes, yeah.
What is it called? Oslo Cafe Airport Bit something. Bit Union.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy cow, is that the best coffee I've ever had. Anyway, for those who don't know, Oslo has one of the most beautiful airports on the planet. And give us a quick update on what's keeping you busy, Sean. Anything exciting happening?
Yeah, I've been kind of taking it easy. I actually moved to a really small village, so I moved out of the city.
Yep.
And I've just been enjoying, kind of like a coastal town here and waiting for things to kind of
really
peel over.
Really adapting to that Oslo lifestyle, that Norwegian lifestyle.
It's true. Yeah, so I've slowed down quite a bit, but I feel like now the energy is coming back. People are coming back. Like it's time to kind of ramp things up
time to go back to 3-hour work days. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Go home at 2 p.m.
Quality
of life.
For those who don't know, these goddamn Norwegians leave home at 2 p.m. and they kind of got it like figured out. It is true. If people think that's a joke, it is not a joke. Like,
yeah, but to be fair though, they usually start work at very early, sometimes like 7 or 8.
mm-hmm.
So that's why they leave so early. But you're right, on Friday maybe it might even be noon they take off.
Yep. So
8 to 2 rather than 9 to 5.
Yes. Yeah, something like that, or 8 to 12. You know, it depends on how much work you have at the office, and your boss is gonna be like, "Hey, you know what? We're caught up on things. Why don't you go ahead and head home early?" And you're like, "What kind of fantasy land am I living in?" Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there's no judgment here. If you need to go pick up the kids, if you're not feeling right, you just go home. I always felt in American offices, if you left early, everyone was kind of eyeing you to be like, why do you think you're special? But here, there's no judgment. You go when you need to go.
Yep. It's an interesting lifestyle they have there in Norway. Anyway, we'll catch up offline, but hang out here and listen in as you do your thing at the airport. So, the other biggest headlines of this very moment, we kind of went through all of them except for, did we do? Well, there was one other really interesting one, and it's like the 20th biggest headline of the day. Indonesia. Well, here's a few others. Indonesia-based grocery delivery app Happy Fresh raises $65 million. Yeah, just like every grocery delivery app on the planet, it's like exploding at the moment. And Germany-based Aleph Alpha aims to build AI models for text and vision like GPT-3, raises $27 million. Big deal. Everyone's doing that. And so this one called Active Fence is really quite interesting, because what Alpha Fence is doing is a bit ambiguous, and I'm wondering, let's read this together and you tell me what you think. It says online abuse, disinformation, fraud, and other malicious content is growing and getting more complex to track. Today, a startup called Active Fence, which has quietly built a tech platform to suss out threats as they are being formed and planned, to suss out threats as they're being planned. Now, how the F does that work? How
with precogs, you got like Tom Cruise action.
There you go. Precog.
Tyler,
yes.
Is the rider truck ready for us? I'll be outside today. Don't let anyone know. Please make sure this conversation is not recorded.
Yeah. So you're right. It's precog. That's what they're selling. Now, here's where it gets interesting, Chris. It says, today, a startup called Active Fence, which has quietly built a tech platform to suss out threats as they're being planned. To make it easier for trust and safety teams at these super big platforms to combat online abuse, disinformation, and fraud. It's coming out of the shadows to announce significant funding on the back of a surge of large organizations using its service. Hint, hint, wink, wink, Facebook, Twitter, yada, yada. It says that.
Could I say very briefly that threats essentially include now the definition of toxic harassment, which means I don't like your product, and essentially it's really something that I don't like, and we should get other people to not like it, and this could be classified as the same sort of thing.
So it says the startup, co-headquartered in New York and Tel Aviv, have raised $100 million funding that will use to continue developing its tools and continue expanding its customer base to date. Active Fence says that its customers include companies in social media, audio and video streaming, file sharing, gaming, marketplaces, and other technologies. That is yet to disclose any specific names, but says that its tools collectively cover billions of users. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Facebook, right? How many apps have billions of users? Not a lot. So, and by the way, this technology, if being used by the likes of somebody like Facebook, Facebook would indeed make them sign a contract saying you cannot list us as a client. And I happen to know this firsthand because I think Sean, you remember my buddies Bryce and Jasper from Taskus in Santa Monica, who built a bit of an empire in Manila of now 30,000 plus team members who do manual artificial intelligence. We call it artificial intelligence, where they do kind of the back end stuff of Facebook with stopping, all misinformation and all of this stuff. So just to give you this, why did that company grow from 13 people to 30,000 people, in the course of a few years? Well, there's billions of people saying lots of stupid shit on Facebook alone, let alone the other platforms, right? So you see where I'm going with this. And Facebook is paying lots of money for those 30,000 people to do that, although less in Manila than they would at home. You see where I'm going? Now, this tool might replace that if they could. Imagine that sales pitch coming into Facebook and saying, hey, I notice you're spending a few $1 billion a year on Taskus in Manila, right? And we've automated it. And even better, we can tell while the bad guys are planning their bullshit, we can nip it in the bud before they ever post it on your thing for you. Sound pretty good? You're paying $2 billion now. We'll take $1 billion a year instead of $2 billion a year. Right? You with me so far? Now, here's where it gets really interesting. So it says governments and brands are two other categories that it is targeting, and it continues to expand. It has been around since 2018, is growing around 100% annually. And the $100 million being announced was raised by Grove Ventures and Lotan Levkovitz of Grove Ventures, makes a quote saying he's happy to be an investor. Now, the increased presence of social media and online chatter on other platforms has put a strong spotlight on how those forums are used, blah, blah, blah. We take and then here's a quote from the CEO, Noam Schwartz, saying, we take a fundamentally different approach to trust, safety, and content moderation. A fundamentally different approach to content moderation. Okay. We are proactively searching the darkest corners of the web and looking for bad actors in order to understand the sources of the malicious content. That means bad people. We're looking on the internet for bad people. The sources of malicious content. Let's read it again. We're proactively searching the darkest corners of the web, looking for bad actors in order to understand the sources of malicious content. That means we're going all over the place looking for the bad guys. Okay, we got that. What's next? Our customers then know what's coming. They don't need to wait for the damage or for internal research teams to identify the next scam or disinformation campaign. We work with some of the most important companies in the world, but even tiny super niche platforms have risks. And then they say the insights that ActiveFence gathers are then packaged up into an API, which is a data pipe, that its customers can then feed into whatever other systems they use to track or mitigate traffic on their own platforms. So that means ActiveFence does what they do. They find the bad guys. Then they make a data pipe. They send the data through the pipe to Facebook to do with what they will on their existing systems. Right? And in the meantime, Facebook forces them to sign a contract saying, we have you're not allowed to say that we're a customer. And we could probably build this technology ourselves, but that would get us in a lot of deep shit if that was ever found out. So better that you do it and we just be a customer of yours, and better that you never tell us how you do what you do. You just send us an API and we'll put our fingers in ours and pretend like we don't know how you're making the sausage. Because interestingly, this sounds like they could potentially be using in the case, and this is my own wild conspiracy theory here, and forgive me for picking on an Israeli company in this instance, because they are the cybersecurity kings of the world by far, where they developed that technology to protect Israel, right? Understandably so. And they export, all of the best cybersecurity startups and unicorns are all coming out of Israel. Is this a cybersecurity tool? Meaning, when they find these bad actors, are they hacking those bad actors to, as they say, preemptively know what they're doing as they plan it, to use their own words? Those are their words. We can precog bad behavior by bad actors. Well, how are you precogging unless you're accessing their devices? Which, by the way, that's what the bulk of the unicorns come.
And because they're arm's length from their clients,
Correct.
The clients can say we didn't
We
know,
had no
we're not
idea how they
hacking.
were getting that
Yeah.
precog information.
Also, how is bad actor defined? Is that just someone I don't like that I happen to be a customer of? Because we've always shown,
Yes.
yeah.
But by the way, what was it called? Pegasus was made for governments. Why not, if you could, okay, and that's one customer base, right? Why not make a Pegasus for the biggest tech companies in the world? But we would have to engineer it a bit differently, wouldn't we? We couldn't just give them a tool so Facebook could hack all kinds of people, or Google or Apple or Snapchat or Tinder could hack a bunch of people. No. Those companies aren't going to get into that. But what if we did it on our side? What if we did the hacking on our side and just gave them a pipe, and at the end of the pipe said, hey, here's some information that might be relevant to you. This bad person is planning to do this bad thing next week.
Can we just start over? I mean, this is getting ridiculous.
But by the way, Google and specifically Facebook and YouTube have to do content moderations on their platform. And the governments are pushing all the time. You gotta do better moderation. More, better, faster, better moderation constantly. We read headlines every day that the governments are not yet happy with the speed of the moderation of these big platforms. And it's an impossible task with billions of users. So this could potentially become an incredibly valuable tool of stopping really egregious content before it ever happens. And that is worth $1 billion a year to these companies. Well, let's do it, because Pegasus is charging, $10 million per country. And what do they have? 50 countries. That's 500 million a year. If you could get one customer, Facebook, and get probably half. You could probably get that just from Facebook alone. So I'm really curious how they are precogging the bad behaviors of these bad actors. And forgive me for assuming that Israelis are fantastic at cybersecurity, because they are. I mean, that's just a given. And are they using some kind of cybersecurity, which is their, Israel's not a one-trick pony, but they do have one amazing trick, which is cybersecurity. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're using their hammer to hit a nail in the way that they are known for doing in such an incredibly amazing way. So again, forgive me for thinking they're using cybersecurity, which they are so incredibly advanced at, in making this kind of a solution for big social networks, which would be an incredibly powerful solution. But it does mean there might be some interesting kind of surveillance going on of these bad actors and their bad behaviors. And as you said, Chris, very presciently, it's precog.
Just real quick. So every router manufactured, every like server and piece of equipment is Cisco, Juniper, whatever you want to call, whatever vendor you're using. They are required by law in any country that they deploy to have a sign called CLEA, CALEA, I think it is. And essentially, this is basically mandated wiretap. Essentially, you flip a switch, and then you can send the data from any stream coming to any other one. This is already incorporated at the hardware level in the design configurations for every piece of server hardware. And then the idea is that wherever they deploy worldwide, that essentially the local law enforcement can use it selectively in whatever ways the local government decrees. Now, the thing about this is that when we're talking about hacking and other things, we're basically articulating ideas saying, oh, this is doing it differently from what was being designed. You configure it a little differently, someone found a hole, you patch that kind of thing. What I think is also worth considering is that there are very large regions of the world where this doesn't require any hacking. It's actually entirely legal, and it's basically required by law, and that, well, that data source, guess what? It's literally just when you install the router equipment at the local ISP, you're in this government area, and they say, all right, well, here's our server room over here. We're just going to feed that data, copy all of it, and then feed it into this tool, and now everything's working magically. That can be designed and actually required. And in fact, when you have things like national security letters or whatever your local country equivalent is, you can require everyone involved to keep it secret, all hush-hush. And if you refuse, well, guess what? You go to jail. And then someone else gets installed that can do that. We're at this point where essentially a lot of the architectures we're using don't have to go off script to basically become very dystopian, because they're being designed in a way that's frankly just a single switch. It's a matter of whether or not someone secretly switched it or not.
So that is the big headlines that your cousins and coworkers are talking about at this moment. And now we're actually going to get into the part that everyone here has been waiting for patiently, because frankly, the big headlines are honestly not the most interesting or exciting ones. It's the ones that people have been finding all over the bowels of the internet, the really interesting, juicy, articles. And so let's get into those. But before we do, I'll pause to make sure to see if anyone's burning with one that they found, since we met last time. Anyone burning with a juicy headline? Going once. Going twice.
Did you talk about Tether yet? Tether and Bitfinex?
Do it.
Or so Tether and Bitfinex together, which it's news that Bitfinex is actually known that they're up on charges, but apparently the DOJ and a bunch of other U.S. agencies are pursuing them on criminal charges. So that's interesting. It's the executives and the exchange, which is what Bitfinex is. And then, and it's also Tether, which has huge impact for the DeFi community. And it has a big impact on countries that have used Tether primarily as their main access point into other types of cryptocurrency. So very interesting, lots of ramifications. Doesn't mean that DeFi will collapse, just means there's going to be a lot of ugliness if this drops. There are already people who are investigating how to short a stablecoin. That's just a very weird thing to say, and it's about as weird as it is right now. It's already below $1, and there's just a lot of old stuff that they're getting prosecuted on, and I would not be surprised if a bunch of it is actually from that case with the New York Attorney General. So, interesting stuff.
So there's another one, Tyler. There's another one I tweeted out about 7 hours ago on TNATW that all of this stuff that's happening in China seems to have been telegraphed very explicitly by the Chinese by the CCP in March, because the article actually just talks about their 14th year plan, which was 14th 5-year plan, which was released in March, had actually said that their central authorities have designated data as one of a small number of factors of production, that national resources that form the backbone, and that as of April 2020, they would start putting that on par with land, labor, capital, and technology and start controlling it. So they had already been saying it since March. That document clearly states that. So if the VCs didn't pick it up or the investors didn't pick it up, maybe the Chinese government stance is, well, that's your problem. We told you so, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
You saw a thing on Tencent WeChat essentially suspending new users for they're just putting it on hold for another cybersecurity review. You covered that one?
We just read it like 30 minutes ago.
Sorry, just dropped it.
Can I share one?
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay, great. This one is from Singapore and related to US. Roboticists from Nanyang Technology University who developed an algorithm capable of predicting a vehicle's position 8 seconds into the future clinched 2 awards at the competition organized by Waymo, the autonomous driving technology development company from United States. So basically, this will be able to help to keep us safe with the autonomous vehicle, because they'll be able to detect 8 seconds before it happens. Okay. I've already tweaked it, so you can take a look at it.
More precognition type stuff. Very cool.
Yeah.
Mahogany?
So,
hang on. Hold on. I think somebody wanted to comment on that one before we go into a new one. Mahogany, was it Jay?
No. I was going to actually do something else. Mahogany can go ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. So this morning, TikTok announced a new live platform.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot like what YouTube does when you are a content creator doing a live. You can, receive gifts real time and, do a Q&A sort of thing it's baked into the experience. And so it's creator engagement in a way that's, moving towards having the users interact with the creators at the same time as they're creating it.
Yep.
But I think I think what's most interesting about this is that they have virtual gifts integrated as well.
Okay, so now you and I know what this is really all about, which is it's got all of the necessary ingredients to do what you and I know what they really want to do with this tech, and they could now flip it on in 30 seconds by just tweaking a couple of parameters. And so what TikTok is doing, and I predicted this, did I not, Mahogany? As you well know, I've been saying,
Yes.
I've been predicting precisely this now for several weeks, in fact, several months, that TikTok is going to go into live streams and for e-commerce live streaming. Yes, audience, class, dear class, please flash your mics if you've heard me rant about that endlessly for months now.
Maybe
A
once
few
or
times.
twice.
At least a few times.
Social
So
commerce.
here it is. Here's the headline. They're just being a little secretive about it because they don't want to tip everybody off just yet. So watch how they've hidden the social e-commerce live stream into and it's kind of hidden now. So watch what they did. It says TikTok wants to engage more live streams as predicted. And that now includes creating friendlier environments for the host. The social video giant is rolling out a string of new features that include tools to promote kindness. For a start, TikTok will now pop up an alert if you are about to post a comment that the company deems potentially unkind or harmful. You can press forward if you're determined, but TikTok clearly hopes you'll reconsider any personal attacks. Accordingly, the host, so now you can engage with the live streamer. Notice that, because that's part of the social commerce, as I've predicted many, many times. Exactly that. Accordingly, the host will have more power as well. You can assign a trusted moderator before you start a stream, letting you focus on the show instead of blocking and muting trolls. You can now add up to 200 entities to the keyword filter. In the coming weeks, you will also have ways for hosts and viewers to both delete comments and temporarily mute viewers. Someone who committed a minor offense can have a shot at redemption. In other words, there's also a focus on improved discovery. And addition rolling out, quote unquote, soon will improve your ability to find live streams from the For You and following pages. Not to mention providing quicker this Engadget, you got a typo here. Not to mention providing quicker access to top and recommended live videos. TikTok also recently launched a scheduling tool for hosts, picture-in-picture viewing, and go live together feature. The focus on live streams doesn't come as a shock. TikTok noted that the number of people hosting and watching a live video had doubled over the past year, and some of its biggest events have involved live streams. The Weeknd played a concert through the platform, for instance. While looping videos remains TikTok's core, the company is more than a little eager to challenge Facebook and Instagram and other services where live video is also growing in popularity for reasons that everyone in this room knows damn well if you join us every day, because that's where the money's going to be. Let me explain just one more time for those kids who've been roaming the hallways of Clubhouse. You finally found the best room in Clubhouse, and I'm finally going to explain to you what the real F is going on. Now pay attention, class. So here's what's
They
going
all
on.
lucked out, right? They lucked out today.
You guys got
This room.
congratulations, everybody.
This
You
is it.
finally found tech news. You finally found the best room in Clubhouse. You did it. Congratulations. And as your prize, I'm going to explain to you what the F's going on. Pay attention. There will be a quiz later. So in China, there's an app called Pinduoduo. It exploded billions in record time, fastest growing app in the history of the planet that we live on called Earth. Right? How did they do it? They combined social media with e-commerce. Imagine combining Facebook and Amazon, where now every Facebook account page is an Amazon store. So you can sell anything you want on your Facebook page. Imagine that. Now imagine it on your phone. Now, what you would do in that instance is you would start taking photos of products, and then you could sell. People could click on those products and buy them from your Facebook page. But then you realize, rather than photos, what if I made a little video? And then you make a little video and you realize very quickly that, in fact, you do make more money from a little video than from a photo. And then the clever little devil that you are, you think, what if I made a longer video? would I sell more than a short video? And then you do that, and it turns out you do make more money from a longer video than from a short video, but you're not done yet. You greedy little bastard. You want those dollars, and you say to yourself, what if I did a live stream? Holy cow, am I a genius? And you do the live stream, and holy cow, next thing you know, you've got 10,000 people watching you live, all asking you questions, just like this blog post I just read about TikTok live streaming, where people can now engage with you in real time and ask you questions. And that's where the money is. How do I know that? Because Lakeisha and I live in Thailand, where this has become the biggest thing. It's so popular, it's replacing TV and movies. That's how popular this is. It's becoming a huge part of people's sales of their businesses and the stuff that people buy. When they buy stuff, they don't go to stores anymore. They go on live streams and watch people live stream the selling of products and talk with them about the products in real time while they're live streaming the product, and they buy that stuff. And it becomes like a game show because they say, I've got 1 minute left on this product and I only got 5 left. Who wants to buy the last 5? Okay, I got 3 left. Who's going to buy? Okay, 1 left. Okay, they're gone. Maybe I'll get some more next week. Next product. And they get all hopped up on mountains of meth and sell products around the clock until they pass out live on
Shit,
the
you're
camera.
good at that, man. Shit, you're good at that. Just gotta say that.
Yeah, he's the experience in selling durian.
Yeah. So now you understand why TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook are all going into live streaming very quickly, just like this article mentioned. And not just live streaming where the audience can chat with them in real time, because TikTok has seen Pinduoduo and they've seen what's happening in Thailand, and they know that all of these influencers who've been spending, all of their free time on their devices, trying to get followers and likes and hearts, are now going to be chasing dollars and money and making not just millions, but tens of millions, and in some cases, billions. Because what happens is these really talented live streamers start getting approached by warehouses who make thousands of products and say, hey, we've got a warehouse that makes thousands of products. How long would it take you to review 1,000 products and sell them? And we can just ship them for you auto-magically and give you a cut. And that starts happening. And then you get people who specialize in different verticals like makeup, and the lipstick king in Asia is making over $1 billion a year. And it's going to get really bizarre really quickly. And it becomes very entertaining. It's more fun to watch, even if you're not interested in buying, than watching TV or movies or Netflix or whatever. And it turns out it's so entertaining that you're actually going to buy some shit you didn't actually need, because these people are incredibly charismatic, the best of these folks. And that's why it also said there would be a way to discover, the best live streams. Now you understand why. Now you understand that what they're hinting at, the technology that they've just launched, is actually a head fake, a little teaser of what's to come in the future of what's called social shopping. It's going to be tremendously huge. So, thank you, Mahogany.
Tyler?
Yeah.
You're welcome. But also on the TikTok page itself, it's noted that 2 key points here. One is it's already launched in some markets. They don't say which markets, but it shows maybe they've been doing piloting already. And 2, the functionality enables registration. So this implies, I'm reading between the lines, the possibility of offering in advance, like ticket sales for an upcoming. That's my analysis.
I got you.
So
yep.
I just tweeted that the main news page for TikTok itself out, and there's a line in there where it says specifically, while viewers can easily discover, register, get notifications, and receive a reminder when the live is about to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's what happens here in Asia as well. Like you start, wanting to know when your favorite seller starts selling stuff, because it can be quite sporadic. But when you find, if you're really into, shoes, like sports shoes, and there's this person who they come on and they just have these insane, mind-blowing deals on shoes, then you're going to want to know next time they're on. That happens all the time. Like when you find somebody who sells stuff that you like, you often want to follow them and get notified when they go live again.
Oh, I just read in Japanese though. Japan had a 24 hours TikTok live 2021 on July 4th that lasted for 24 hours. 24 I think
24
they
hours.
were, yeah. So it was a live TikTok for 24 hours. I think they are all the performers.
So that's at
Yep.
least one market that we now know where they went. Yep.
They're
How
testing. I can
about
send you the
Poolan?
link.
I'm curious, like, will they allow it? Like, in China, for instance?
Of
Usually, I
course,
mean,
they'll
all that.
sponsor it.
Allow
No,
what?
but I'm talking live.
What do you
Will
mean?
they allow a live show?
Yes.
Would China allow a live show like this to happen? TikTok to have a live show because
Of
they
Why?
would
course, you've got
they cannot
identities on
have
everyone involved.
Why
You'll
would?
encourage
Why
it.
wouldn't they, Heyman?
because I'm curious if it's not sales, if it's just user
TikTok.
engagement.
Mm-hmm.
No, if it's
They're
user
already doing it
engagement, like it.
in China. It's
Yeah,
called
But
China
how
Douyin.
is
does it?
It's the
big.
same thing.
They're already doing it.
Yeah, but
No, but
Heyman.
Yeah,
don't
they've been
they
doing
actually
it
control
long
the
time
real
ago.
live, like really live? They're scared of having live conversations.
Yes,
They're
but
not scared.
they've figured out a very clever way to control that, which
All
is
right.
they force everybody who wants to live stream.
Yes.
The app who's doing the live stream is then forced to register that person with their face with a facial recognition system and their state ID, so they know what your home address. Your face is registered on a facial recognition system called SenseTime, which is based out of Shenzhen and Hong Kong. And then when your live stream starts, they know who you are. It does a facial
Mm,
recognition thing, and it says, yes, you're the owner of that account. Okay, great. Go ahead. If you say something that they don't like live, your stream ends, and then you get visited by a bunch of nice guys who, want to take you down to the police station for a little chat. And
Yep. And
if,
and imagine
empty.
if you get
Like
deep faked. What
they
if they
want
leave
you
behind
to.
one of the officers to deep fake you?
but then
It's
the real question
theoretical at
is,
this point.
what happens if somebody enters your live stream whose face hasn't been registered?
Oh,
The live
Okay,
stream.
you look. If this thing is happening within China itself, it's within the Great Firewall of China. If they want to do anything over their live video, they can do anything live in person. So
right.
they will not do it because there will be self-censorship.
So,
So
so guys, I used to work with, I had a client with a Chinese ISP, and I don't know, I think all of you know this. There's a 30-second latency on even a
Oh,
live stream within China, just like all the news channels. So anything that is said, all the algorithms are picking up the words. It'll automatically shut off. That's how the BBC and CNN suddenly goes blank before. So the 30-second latency is there, Heyman, and they can
that's
manage
oh
absurd.
yes.
80% of stuff
Thanks.
there.
Thanks. I think that's what I'm really wondering. Like, will those kind of mechanisms be put in place for the world, or would they like love to have this kind of information?
Well,
I'm just curious.
this is where rooms like this get really interesting, because we've read headlines that the Indian intelligence agencies are in Clubhouse, and you can bet your bottom dollar that India is not the only country with their intelligence agents in here. And you could bet they would love to know who's this crazy bald dude spouting off all of this stuff that would hurt our dear leader's feelings. And
If you'd like to find a number of the people there here in Clubhouse of Spook Intelligence, come join the Nuclear Weapons Club. You can find a lot of them real quick.
This is why I don't enter your room. This is why I don't enter
You
your room.
think we don't get them in this room?
yeah, no,
You'd be
we
oddly
for
surprised.
sure we do. But
Chris,
anything with the word nuclear missiles in the title of your room is likely to get a
yeah.
few
Chris, why do you
government
speak so
agents in the
fast?
room.
Chris, why do you speak so fast? Why do you speak so fast? Why do you speak so
Exactly.
fast?
The trolling.
Plausible deniability. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
can I just say one thing on Heyman's comment about China? I want to make having people inside China, like young people, they, if you're not at the level where you're making, you've got a cause that you're trying to move or anything, they're living a pretty modern life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's just get this straight, and a pretty progressive sense of use of the internet and gaming, and because we're like in the consumer business there, and we saw, I mean, hey man, and because within, as Cheryl said really well, within that firewall, right, life is good, right, for them, until you get to these points of where they're protesting or having a cause that they want to move for. But when you're talking about commerce and just socially living and gaming and food delivery, man, the innovation is amazing. right? The innovation and the new ways that people try and do stuff. So there's a lot to learn about consumer stuff that, we to kind of, for Western companies to kind of learn and take and understand, because the events that they do and the big, the big events we used to learn from, the recycling events they used to run. They could recycle like huge numbers of washing machines like really quickly. In the US, we're like kind of convincing people to buy stuff. And the process they were running through that, some of our retail, the retail company we had there. And so there's just I think it's worth giving people a sense of that, because we don't have a lot of our Chinese friends here on stage that
Yeah.
used to come, right? They've all
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
I think if there's a chance, those people who are interested in China, you should go China and just experience it for yourself. There's once I
Yeah.
was in China, I need a spare phone. So at night, my friend just asked me, okay, just get a cheap Xiaomi phone online. So, okay, I just ordered one. And the next morning when I woke up, the phone is there. And it's China, it's so big, but it's just overnight and the phone is there. I was so impressed.
On the other live streaming thing, so I remember during Occupy, they'd have it was really frustrating because all the news media would have the exact same news headline at the exact same time, and there would be nothing interesting. And they literally, you'd need to have press credentials to even be let to cover the thing, which is crazy.
Oh, we
So
have
there's some people
David.
that had. There's some people that had like these streaming these little cell phones because they were the new hotness or whatever, and they just wander on down with things and say, hey, look, let's just basically interview people here. Because I'm not a journalist, but I've got a cell phone. I can do things. Hey, look, I can take questions live from people, and because you're the only news source that actually is there on the ground, you'd have these tiny little groups. Essentially, they're getting like 8 million people streaming on their little phones or whatever. And what's cool is they would take questions live from the audience and they'd ask people there. What'd be interesting is I'd watch is essentially they'd say, okay, my battery's going low with things, so I'm gonna have to cut to the live stream. Someone would call up someone in the swarm of Occupy people down there with things, and they'd find the dude that's live streaming and go, you don't have that excuse. Here's 4 batteries. Keep going. And they mentioned I'm getting hungry, and someone else like ships them some food or whatever. And it'd be this weird swarm intelligence type kind of thing. When I look at the things that are happening with live streaming for Home Shopping Network 2.0 versions, it just is so sterile. It's like a person in a studio just saying going from a script of here's things to sell. There's something very exciting about the early days of live streaming where you never quite knew what was going to happen. And the thing that was also interesting is there are so many chaotic actors on the broadcasting side. It was actually very unscripted. It was very unusual. And what I think was really interesting is that when we kind of capped off all the parts and lopped off all the parts that could basically be unpredictable, I think we lost some of the more beautiful aspects of the venue. You see a little slice of these occasionally with things like Twitch based Pokemon or some of these other weird chaotic little experiments. But I feel like as it's growing, it's going to become more profitable. We're also going to see some of the beautiful stuff that that's a little more interesting, kind of left behind as it goes along the way.
Okay, I want to get into some other juicy headlines at this moment.
Since we are on China, can I mention something?
Okay.
Are you aware that Weixin, the WeChat, actually stopped allowing new registers in China?
Can you say that slower, please?
WeChat,
yes?
which is Weixin, in China, they have temporarily stopped allowing new registers.
Yeah,
new people to new
we
users.
read that headline an hour ago. Chris brought it up 30 minutes ago, and then you just brought it up just now.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Because David is here.
It's
so
a hot topic.
Yeah.
It is.
And
yeah,
before
David
we
Chang here, though.
Okay, hey, David Chang, welcome back.
Hey. Morning.
Hey. So, morning, what are you talking about? It's midnight your time. So, unless, yeah. Well,
no, I'm
he's
in
the
the
US.
US.
He's in the US.
Okay, there you go. It is morning there. On the topic of China, DW from Germany has a headline today that says China accuses U.S. of creating imaginary enemy at high-level talks. Chinese officials said Washington was not qualified to level criticism on human rights during the rare face-to-face meeting in Tianjin. I guess there was just a meeting in Tianjin. I wasn't aware of that.
Yep.
China accused the United States of making an imaginary enemy out of Beijing at a high-level meeting in the northeastern port city of Tianjin on Monday. The talks between U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman and her Chinese counterpart came amid worsening relations between the world's two largest economies. The U.S. wants to reignite the sense of national purpose by establishing China as an imaginary enemy, Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Xi Feng said at the meeting. The hope may be that by demonizing China, the U.S. could somehow blame China for its own structural problems, Xi told Sherman, according to a statement issued by Beijing. Xi also said the U.S. was responsible for a stalemate in bilateral relations and called for a change in its highly misguided mindset and dangerous policy. He added that Washington was not qualified to level criticism on human rights. What did the U.S. say? U.S. officials have described the meeting as healthy and professional, but said the talks did not result in any concrete agreements. In the statement, the U.S. said it does not seek conflict with China. There are some things that rise above specific differences that are the global responsibility of great powers, Sherman told the Associated Press by phone after talks had concluded. Sherman shared her concerns over China's lack of cooperation with the second phase probe the WHO is conducting into the origins of COVID-19, said the statement. She raised the cases of several U.S. and Canadian citizens China has detained with Wang, W-H-A-N-G. Research agreement or specific outcomes was not the purpose of today's conversations, a senior U.S. official told Reuters. And that's the essence of their meeting. It does say she is taking part in talks with Xi, who is in charge of the U.S.-China relations. Ahead of the visit, U.S. officials had given an overview of the Deputy Secretary of State's expected position on the meeting. The U.S. said it had welcomed competition with China, but insisted upon a level playing field and guardrails to avoid any potential conflicts. The U.S. had been critical of China's handling of Hong Kong and raised concerns about its treatment of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. The U.S. Senate has passed a bill to ban imports from the region in China's far west over forced labor conditions. Sherman's visit follows a highly contentious meeting in Anchorage, Alaska earlier this year, where Wang and veteran Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi met U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. There we go. So next big headline is, here we go. Doctors worry that memory problems after COVID-19 may set stage for Alzheimer's. Some patients who had COVID-19 developed symptoms resembling early Alzheimer's. Researchers are trying to figure out whether these people are, in fact, getting early stages of Alzheimer's as a result of COVID.
Infectious brain damage.
Yeah.
It's only 7 IQ points, by the way. So,
but if they join this program, they actually can raise it. Honestly,
you can join Tech News Club if you would like.
And that's based on some evidence, loose evidence,
very loose evidence. But
very loose.
Flash your mics if your IQ has gone up as a result of joining the Tech News Club. Let's just do a little random survey here. So Cal's IQ went up, Lakeisha's, Jason's, Vinay's, Evan. I rest my case. You got about half, and the rest of you clearly just need to come back more often. But you see for yourself, join the Tech News Club. IQ points go up. We had somebody, their credit score went up. Somebody's mom started calling them again, and
that was me.
Amazing things happen.
Oh, man.
We're proud of you, Chris. And, you can be more beautiful, happy, healthy, and fulfilled simply by clicking on the title of this room and clicking follow on the Tech News Club. Your results may vary, and there may be side effects, and those.
You miss a day or two, and you lose some hair at the back.
There's peculiar side effects. We could talk about later.
And also, my wife complains I'm spending too much time on this app.
Yeah, that's a common side effect as well.
Yeah, invite her to join.
Oh, she is here. We should invite her up. Is she here?
Okay. So researchers are testing concrete that can charge your EV while you drive. Oh boy, that would be fantastic. And then the gas car companies would really be up poo-poo creek without a paddle, because then you wouldn't need charging stations anywhere, would you? You could just charge as you drive. My goodness, that would be fantastic. And then Google offers a free service that lets you get a second phone number and blocks robocalls simultaneously. Oh boy. I just tweeted that out as I'm tweeting out all these fantastic headlines to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW, which are the little white letters above my head here in Clubhouse. And you absolutely should follow the Tech News Twitter account. So you can see all of these tweets in real time as we tweet out every headline, as we always do every day. And I'm interested to get my own second phone number from Google that blocks robocalls. So other fantastic headlines at this moment. Jeremiah, you sent out one when we were talking about the flooding of the Bay Area near the Google and Facebook campuses, which also the SFO airport is also not far from there. And apparently the SFO airport is out of commission in only 1 foot of water.
What? It rained here? I didn't know it rained.
No, he didn't say that it rained. We earlier we were discussing what happens when sea levels rise and who will be impacted in the Bay Area. And it turns out with just 1 foot of sea level rise, the San Francisco airport will be out of commission.
Oh, I see.
We do not have the technology for stacking dirt. It's something we will figure out eventually, but it's something that's currently outside of our grasp. If you put it in one area,
The U.S. is
it'll move
bad
all
at infrastructure.
Yeah, the Volkswagen
in Singapore.
Hold on, I know Singapore is great. Volkswagen in advanced talks to buy Europe car, and for anyone who's ever visited Europe and ever arrived at an airport in Europe knows that Europe car is like the leading car rental company, and so Volkswagen buying the biggest European car rental company is quite interesting because, as I predicted, in the future you will not be buying Volkswagens, you'll be renting them on demand, and in the short term, until eventually they won't even let you rent them anymore, because they'll be too valuable to the company. But in the short term, in the interim, we're going to swap or shift from car ownership to car rentership on an as-needed basis, because for most people that will become more economically in line, more cost efficient.
Yeah, I can bring some actual context from
Berlin,
from Germany.
Go.
Because in Berlin we use WeShare, which is the Volkswagen rental and kind of sharing car sharing system. And I have to say that I don't think I will ever buy a car because it just makes no sense. It's constantly charged. You drive an electric vehicle. If you don't want an electric, you can drive a regular BMW. It's also a car sharing option, and it makes all the sense in the world. Like the prices are going down. If you have a subscription, you pay 19 cents a minute, which is nothing. And you can drop off your car anywhere. You can take it to the airport, and it's half price of the taxi. So it's really, really convenient, and that's a great service. If they reduce the amount of cars that are being bought, that are most of the time useless, as we know. I mean, useless, not used, not utilized. Then that should improve also the traffic, which luckily in Berlin is not crazy, but it will be if people continue to buy more than one car per family unit, which is what happens.
What happens when these subscription services have less data protection than Grindr? I mean, it's like the subscription services, like at least it's not actually a real thing with stuff because every street light and camera essentially monitors all the license plates. So it's not like you actually have privacy when you drive your own private car somewhere with things. But it's at least a nice theory. If you have subscription services for every last service of life, is there even possible to have privacy? Because you only need one of them to basically start squealing on you, and then it's
right. I mean, I think I always say this. To me, it's always a question of convenience versus versus that the value of privacy. How valuable is your privacy to you versus saving time to being able to do things and experience things. So I think everyone has to do this calculation for themselves. So
yeah, I think I've been using that car sharing service in Tokyo for quite a while already. I never thought about privacy because I'm okay for letting people know where I'm going. Actually, I don't mind.
Very Singaporean of you.
I trust the institution.
Yep. So do Swedes. David Cheng, I have a question for you.
What's up?
You remember when the birth rate data came out about 2 months ago for China, right?
That's right.
And it seems that we read an article from a month ago, actually, that in the Wall Street Journal, that potentially this big crackdown on the ed tech companies in China might actually be related to the declining birth rate. That it's
It is.
okay, good. So if we understand correctly, the idea is that the birth rate is declining in part because parents feel that the cost of not actually having the child, but educating the child is a very considerable cost that most families are not willing to take on, and so the government understands. Now we understand one of the reasons why the birth rate is declining, because the cost of educating children is too high. And so let's remove all of the billions of dollars going to these ed tech companies and insist that they be nonprofits, and then all likely will all become equalized so that everyone has access to become a much more equal system in terms of access to good education, and keep the money in the parents' pockets and not in the pockets of a handful of ed tech companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think the primary motive for the government to institute this policy is to encourage parents to have more children, right? To maximize on the opportunity to have up to 3 children now. The problem is, especially in major Chinese cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and some of these more advanced, larger, and higher quality of living, if you will, cities, it's very expensive to raise your children, and sending them to. I mean, there's this Chinese saying that you don't want to lose at the starting line, right? So, sending your child to the best local private schools. I mean, I think this is very much like New York or London
Yeah,
or
L.A. and New York. Yeah.
exactly, right? I mean, you have the exact same problem in the West as well.
Yes.
And in order to get into these schools, um, I'm not sure what kind of premium people pay in the UK or in the US, but in business, for example, one of the biggest gifts or favors we can do for a potential business partner is helping their children get into the schools of their choice.
Ah.
And you will almost be assured to have secured this person's business if you can do that for them.
Yeah, makes sense. The
And
but here
and the
here
tuitions for these places,
yeah.
not so here's what makes it very interesting. So the tuition is maybe like your US equivalent, $40,000-$50,000 a year, right? Which is, for a well-paid urban professional, it's nothing. But you have to give, effectively, I think the closest English term is like a debenture, and then the debenture is, like a forced donation, if you will, right? And then the debentures start at about $150,000 US.
And
So
then
that's why I think there are so many crackdowns on these educational institutions. On top of all of that, remember, all of the local governments in China, their biggest source of revenue is by selling land, and because local governments lose a lot of money selling land to educational institutions because they have to subsidize the cost of the land. So they will reduce their revenue. And the only way to reach a happy medium for the developers who build these schools and the local government is to raise the cost of going to these schools.
So
So I think
Can
all
I
of
ask
these
a
factors
question?
contribute.
and after
Yeah.
I got
Okay.
I'm almost done. So there was substantial. This was a bold move in some sense. Many people are confused why they were doing this, and I appreciate the cultural context to kind of figure this out, because it's not it's a bit perplexing, because it potentially is going to scare away a lot of investors from China, because Tencent, Sequoia, well, maybe the Chinese investors won't be scared away because they understand the cultural context. But I had a friend from Qualcomm Ventures come in here, and I said, "Have you seen what happened to Didi?" He said, "Yeah, of course." "Did you see what happened with these ed tech companies?" "Yeah, of course." What does your takeaway from this? And his takeaway was, "Get out of China! Like, we're never gonna even think about hearing a pitch from a Chinese tech company again, because it can just get cracked down in a heartbeat. And there was, billions lost, and there was one Chinese investor who is reported to have lost $15 billion in the ed tech startups, and
I
losing.
know. I was in the earlier room.
Yeah. So
Not using this account, but I
so
was in the room, so I heard
is
you.
is that not a realistic position that the international investors are going to be scared off? I imagine the government took that into account in calculating the cost of making this rather bold move?
Absolutely, but I think, in all fairness, institutions like Qualcomm Ventures, um, not necessarily them, but institutions like them, have not been successful in China for years, almost a decade. Foreign, non-Chinese, how do I explain this? Non-Chinese managed venture firms just have not been having much success. I mean, I would even go so far as to say the likes of mega funds like Carlyle, KKR, and Blackstone
Yeah.
haven't even been nearly as successful as they were in the past in China now. The really successful players are the Chinese managed funds, albeit many of their LPs or investors are actually Western institutions, right? So the likes of, say, Sequoia China, IDG, Matrix Partners China, they still raise money from foreign LPs, Western LPs, but the management team is completely sort of homegrown, and they do have the relationships and the understanding of the workings inside China.
Hmm.
Um, I actually, based upon my conversations with LPs that we work with, they are, I almost want to say, more bullish on China than ever,
Hmm.
despite everything that's going on.
So
So
it
I've
might
been
not.
in New York. Yeah,
Do
sorry.
they? I guess they feel like over time, certainly the investors within China understand the cultural context and aren't scared away by the crackdown on the ed tech, because they understand it's related to the birth rate issue, which investors outside of China are going to be like, what? That seems a little, peculiar,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
I think in the West, people often talk about how I got screwed over by the government,
right,
and how this very arbitrary thing came down and wiped out billions from my balance sheet.
right,
But what they don't say is how they got the billions in the first place, right?
right.
Because everyone was still working in the fields 30 years ago in China. So
Yeah.
um, that
How?
that that much wealth accumulation in such a short amount of time means they also were the benefactors of certain policies,
Yeah.
while they're just now on the blunt end of that policy
Okay.
now.
So, quick question before I hand it to Cheryl and we get into the headlines, which is the. It seems like they're clearly taking big moves that even result in some temporary pain to address this declining birth rate head on. Which is there? That we saw that they might raise the retirement age. They changed their one child policy. Are there other potential things that they might change that we might be able to benefit from financially by preemptively figuring out what the next one of these future changes might be?
That was
That's
my
the $1 billion question, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I have an
I'll
idea.
What's that?
I'll DM you on what companies to
Okay.
short.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Anyway,
Go
I have
ahead,
an
Cheryl.
idea on this. I think because there's a situation in Singapore as well, because the parents want the children to go to those kind of like famous schools, so they purposely move to very near those schools, because you're only allowed to enroll in those schools if you live nearby. So that means the houses around those schools are usually higher
Right.
relatively. So I think it's the same situation in China. So the next thing that the Chinese government may do, will they actually try to surprises of property just to keep them affordable?
Well, so okay, so here's the thing: as astronomical as housing prices are in China, especially in the top major cities, there's actually a fuck ton of restrictions on who can buy them. So first of all, in Shanghai, unless you have a legitimate job in Shanghai and have been paying taxes to as an employed person working within Shanghai for at least 6 years, you're not allowed to buy a house in Shanghai. So only people who are born with a Shanghai registered address can purchase homes there. and then even then there's a restriction on how many you can purchase. So it's not like the government haven't stepped in and made it impossibly difficult for most Chinese people to buy homes in these areas. And this is why you see a lot of these multimillionaire wealthy Chinese people are willing to go down to Hong Kong and pay a 30% stamp duty to buy a house in Hong Kong, because even though there's a 30% premium, they can do it right away so long as they have the money. But they can't do the same thing in if they're from a second or third tier city and go to Shanghai or Beijing. So there's already massive restrictions in place. It's just where you strike the balance, because at the same time, the government doesn't want to destroy the housing market by letting prices sort of free fall either, right? Unfortunately, China's debt market is nowhere as sophisticated as that in the US or in Europe. So the overwhelming bulk of the asset backing all of the debt papers in China are still sort of property assets. So while
But David,
while
can't
it's in the
you
best,
circumvent it by renting instead of buying?
so I mean, in our properties business, that's also been one of the biggest pain points we've been trying to address for the last 7 years. But here's the problem with renting. Um, you need to, for any property developer to want to create good rental properties, that the yield needs to be attractive enough, right? Like in in any yielding property assets,
We
if you're
get
not
you.
hitting at least 4%,
I
right?
got it. I got it.
Why would a developer put money in to do this in the first place?
Okay, but we're getting off into the weeds here. I want to get back to two quick little questions. One is, we read a headline yesterday that the government is now piloting their central bank digital currency, the digital yuan, with Alipay and WeChat Pay, which I think is kind of brilliant from the government's perspective. And the headlines even implied like these companies are in a catch 22. They can't really refuse, but if they accept, it's like what happens to their, they built up their own payment systems that are now going to get potentially cannibalized by the state's central bank digital currency system. But that certainly, if that pilot works out, and of course it will, then clearly we now see how tremendously fast they're going to be able to roll out the central bank digital currency, if because Alibaba and WeChat Pay, or Alipay and WeChat Pay, are so wildly popular that once that becomes sort of the default settlement layer inside of those apps, boom, the whole country's using the central bank digital currency. And then they could go one step further and tell the other apps that use payment systems that they also would need to use the central bank digital currency. They probably delay that one. They wouldn't necessarily even need to do it, because just by doing WeChat Pay and Alipay, you would get the overwhelming majority of people buying and selling through the central bank digital currency. Any thoughts on that? Does that seem like a legitimate conspiracy theory that's how that could play out?
David?
Oh, David, you're mute.
Yeah, maybe he's on a call.
Sorry. No. I didn't realize. I was going to say I don't think WeChat Pay and Alipay are on the chopping block quite yet. I think the bigger threat will actually be to some of the traditional brick and mortar banks. Um, First of all, you have to remember Alipay and WeChat Pay, especially Alipay, participated in the creation of the Chinese CBDC along with PBOC for the past several
Mm-hmm.
years. So I think they're fully aware of how to best tune their businesses to capture the future upsides of working together with the central bank on
Okay.
all of this.
Fair answer. Next question. Last question. And then,
Yeah.
by the way, Heyman is going to start the MedTech Health News Around the World, which is starting in 2 minutes. And Ben is going to start
on the runway.
The Bitcoin Beginner Q&A room in 2 minutes, and we're going to bounce between those rooms. So my last question for you, David, is we noticed that there was 10, I believe it was speaking of Alipay and TikTok and two other big Chinese tech companies were sponsoring the Euro 2020 soccer match, which caught a lot of people by surprise. why would these apps be such big visible sponsors in Europe when they're I guess that's a signal that they're going to be focusing more on Europe going forward, I guess.
Potentially, but remember what I said the other day, which is uh, the biggest gambling market for European football is actually China, right? The amount of movement that we see across the board of Chinese still gambling into European football matches is incredible. And so if you have more Chinese eyes on these games than European eyes, then a lot of that advertising is not really for the local market. It's for the main spectator market, which is the Chinese market.
Got it. Thank you for that. Makes sense. And then I've got
Tyler, there's
yes,
one.
Monica,
Tyler, there
go.
is one thing about Tencent and Ali Pay, which is that all China has one of the largest number of travelers all across the world,
Sure.
and that is why Singapore has actually created an acceptance for this, and that started the tide in the Southeast Asian countries for acceptance of Ali and WeChat. Now, I don't know whether you read the news about WeChat and the crackdown on their signups, but essentially,
Fourth time. This is a new record. We had
Yay!
right.
See?
So
4
Made
mentions of
my
one
second
headline.
night.
That's a new
absolutely,
record.
but Tyler, it doesn't actually impact anybody because everybody has the app anyway. I think the Chinese government is sending a message, which is why I'm glad that David is back. I would love if we could cover this sometime. Sorry, I've been missing the room in the evening, but I really don't think this is going to have any impact
Okay.
other than obviously hitting the shares and causing an impact where it matters the most, which is the bottom line for the company. The users are still going to continue to use
Okay.
paying with it. Sorry.
Okay. So I've got 20 of the best headlines of the past 24 hours. I'm just going to blast through before we go into either the MedTech, Health Tech room or the Bitcoin beginners room. And here they are in no particular order. Here we go. Ready? Shall we do this? Mahogany sent in one from DW.com out of Germany, Deutsche Welle, which says, will China's 5G digital Silk Road take over the internet? Super interesting thought. China is set to connect developing countries in Asia and Africa with next generation 5G technologies while companies in the West fall behind. But can Beijing be trusted with the future of the internet is the question from Deutsche Welle. And on the giant China theme, Vinay sent in this one that I'm tweeting out now to the Tech News Twitter account. Room for 10,000 inside China's largest detention center. There's one of the estimated 240 in just one section of Urumqi detention center seen by Associated Press journalists, which is a singular facility for 10,000 individuals. And then the article that I just mentioned about why are Chinese tech brands flocking to Euro 2020. And Dubai police will use citywide network of drones to respond to crime. Fantastic. Dubai police will be able to respond to an incident anywhere in the UAE city within a minute, thanks to a network of pre-positioned drones. Love it. What could go wrong? Mark Cuban backed Eternova raises $10 million to turn your loved one's ashes into a diamond. Lovely. Resonating with people seeking a way to keep a piece of their loved ones close to them after their death. And Europe's proposed AI law could cost the EU economy $36 billion, according to a think tank, or a think tank is warning a new law designed to regulate AI in Europe could end up costing the EU economy 31 billion euros or $36 billion over the next 5 years, as they kind of are going to over-regulate AI. 3 companies now make up 50% of U.S. advertisements. Can you guess the companies? Welcome to Tech News Jeopardy. 3 companies now make up 50% of the U.S. ad revenues.
Google.
Google.
Yes.
Instagram.
Apple.
Google is correct.
Facebook.
Facebook is correct.
Is Instagram under Facebook too?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the last one? TikTok.
No, I'm sorry. And the last one was Amazon, but close. You got 2 out of 3. Not bad.
Yeah.
Next up, EU gives Google 2 months to improve hotel flight search results and explain how it ranks these, which is like explain your algorithm. Yeah, good luck with that. Or face possible sanctions in the EU. Google's long faced scrutiny from antitrust enforcers and consumer groups around the world over its business practices, particularly in the EU. And it looks like they might get sanctioned. Spotify ads an attention grabbing "What's New" feed to addict users to its app and its new live stream. Essentially, it's kind of like Twitter built into Spotify for all the artists you follow in Spotify when they make all kinds of new announcements. Of course, when they release new songs, but also when they go into their version of Clubhouse Rooms, as Clubhouse was cloned by a company called Locker Room, which sold itself to Spotify, which they rebranded as Green Room, which the artists in Spotify will likely do participate in. And when they do, you can get notified of upcoming podcasts, upcoming song releases. When your artists sell things from their profile pages, because their profile pages are going to become e-commerceified, almost like little Amazon pages where they will sell. You can imagine Metallica selling all of their t-shirts and all their other swag and merchandise from their Spotify account, where they will then get paid. And maybe even upcoming concert tickets or virtual concert tickets where they'll perform virtually inside of their version of Clubhouse. And you'll now get notified in the new notified What's New feature that they're now launching. And now you know why they're launching a What's New feature, because they've got all kinds of new things coming in the What's New category. And then Mahogany sends in one from The Verge about how to turn yourself into a cartoon for your next Zoom call. It looks like exactly like a Disney character, essentially, during a Zoom call. A filter turns you into a generic DreamWorks Pixar character, and it works rather perfectly. And you got to see this to understand it at the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW. And Vinay sent in one that China's naval plans in Africa are a threat in the Atlantic. Says a U.S. General Beijing has approached several countries about establishing a naval facility that would help it base warships in the Atlantic as well as the Pacific. And this is from the South China Morning Post, a publication in China. So I should have mentioned that in reverse order. South China Morning Post says China's naval plans in Africa are a threat in the Atlantic, according to a U.S. general. And Facebook halts sales of the Oculus Quest 2 due to face irritation concerns. A silicone cover to the foam faceplate is being offered as a solution and will be included in the new 128 gigabyte model coming October 24th. And Dan and Mahogany both sent this one in, that Marlboro maker CEO, which is one of America's largest cigarette brands, or the world's largest cigarette brands, says the company plans to stop selling smokes in the UK. Our ambition is that more than half of our net revenue will come from smoke-free products in 2025. And Binance NFT marketplace to feature tokenized art, including Leonardo da Vinci from the State Heritage Museum. And also Shopify also announced they're going into the NFT sales booming space. Dr. Fran just sent in one that Facebook's next target is the religious experience. According to the New York Times, the company is intensifying formal partnerships with faith groups across the United States and shaping the future of the religious experience, including the ability to watch church sessions through live streams, and even make financial contributions to the church through the apps, and all kinds of interesting things. They're digitizing the church experience. And Dr. Fran also sent in one about from the New York Times about disinformation for hire. The shadowy industry is booming. Back alley firms meddle in elections and promote falsehoods on behalf of clients who claim deniability, escalating our era of unreality, where they highlight the case that was tracked back to Russia in trying to spread misinformation about Pfizer and trying to promote their own Sputnik vaccine. And Nalormi sent in one from thedrive.com about the Air Force Directed Energy Report argues defensive force shields may be just on the horizon. And the Air Force Research Laboratory argues that we've hit a tipping point with directed energy technologies, bringing many science fiction concepts closer to reality. Force field shields. And Alexa finally gets a new name and a voice. Now Alexa has a masculine sounding voice option, and you can call your device Ziggy if you wish. Plus, you can mix and match. And how Olympic surfing is trying to ride machine learning waves. As surfing completes its first ever Olympic ride, the sport is poised for another sea change thanks to artificial intelligence and big data. There we go. And that does it for this edition of Tech News Around the World. And please join us for the Tech News Around the World Med Tech News, or the Bitcoin intro session that Ben is hosting for everyone who needs to get a deep dive and learn more and on-ramping onto Bitcoin. So we'll see you there, or we will see you here tomorrow. Click on the title, follow the club, and check out the times of the next Tech News Around the World. Hopefully we will see you then, and bring a friend, and we will see you next time.
Thank
Hi.
you.